What is up, YouTube? How's everyone doing? And notice there's already some comments. So we're live.
Woo!
We are here at Falcon Space Laboratories at the East Coast Gravity Lab, and we have quite an interesting story of what happened today. Where do we even begin? All right, so let me start by introducing the team here and introducing myself. My name is Jeremy Riss. I'm better known as the alien scientist. I've kind of been after. I got into. Ah, I got into physics in high school, reading Richard Feynman's. Surely you're joking, Mr. Feynman. And I became fascinated with the Manhattan Project and classified programs, and specifically physicists who work on classified programs, and sort of how history, alternative history in general too, and how sort of a lot of that history has been hidden or obscured due to the classified nature of a lot of the physics. I mean, the real physics, not the stuff that they teach you in university, which I abandoned after undergrad school, and I never went and pursued a PhD or graduate program. I've spent the past probably decade or so pursuing physics papers related to gravity, anything related to theories of gravity, gravitation, of course, all Einstein's general relativity stuff, and Wheeler, DeWitt, and going back as far as the first early theories of quantum gravity, and where we are now. And I'm trying to merge the theoretical world, which I've explored quite deeply, with the experimental world, which I have also a lot of hands-on experience. I'm a contractor by trade, and I build a lot of stuff, and I'm really good at envisioning things and then building them, and coming up with ideas for how to construct things. And I know a lot about materials, not as much as some of the other people in our group that aren't here with us. But we are collaborating, and we are forming a network of people. We're starting to get into some of the bigger conferences, as what happened today with the Estes Park conference, hosted by James Woodward. We're finally getting in touch with some of these people. We're of course, Mark being the youngest person in the group. They have young people, because all these guys are pretty much senior citizens, and they realize that if they're not going to get younger people interested in this subject, and younger audiences, that it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going. We're not going to see physics develop in these areas. So I'm pleasure to be part of this, and to be reaching audiences and getting more people and more people in general, older people too, that approach me interested in people internationally who are becoming more interested in research and where things are at, the state of the art with gravity. So let me introduce Mark, or let Mark introduce himself.
My name is Mark Sokol, and about a year ago I founded Falcon Space. Been interested in anti-gravity ever since I realized that aliens are real and UFOs are real and the technology is possible. I'm a very hands-on learner, autodidact by nature. Didn't even graduate high school technically, because I was just learning about religion and Judaism and all that. But I have made myself a career with hybrid batteries, and I built the equipment to refurbish the batteries myself.
Not just agree, you run your own shop.
We're inside of a hybrid battery shop.
How many
right
square
now.
feet is this place?
This place is 3,000 square feet.
3,000 square foot shop that we're at right now. Mark pretty much runs by himself, and it's all back technology stuff. So we have a lot of high voltage equipment.
That was literally, we built it
That
ourselves.
was a drawing point for me, and teaming up with Mark. And of course, we've teamed up with other technicians. I want Jeremiah to give a chance for him to introduce himself.
I flew out from Milwaukee to basically oversee the experiments that were planned on being done around the Estes Park conference, and to take part in that conference and make a few comments, and more than anything else, just learn as much as I possibly could from the presenters, of which there were just so many great, incredible conversations that happened during that conference that are just mind-blowing for implications, and many of which are quite agreeable in their nature and compatible to really expand our potential view of physics as we see things now. So basically, I'm just taking a look over the magnetic system that was set up here for the Alzapon replication, Where-
You come from a background in the calibration
Yeah.
industry, though, correct?
Yeah, 8.5 years in the calibration industry, and my specialty was in magnetic systems and in high voltage. So that's why I'm here, is to inspect the magnetics, the laminarity of the field, and do a profiling of that field. Determine that we have a nice, even, steady signal to supply the electromagnets with the current, and that heating is not an issue with our test setup. Also, that the mechanical scale and the bearings are working correctly, and that our sway arm is not sticking or has any kind of mechanical lag. So just basically look for errors in the system in any place where they might exist. Identify them, and if they exist, account for how much error they might be adding into the total measurement.
Right, another issue we've come across is gauss meters. Right after we finished machining the electromagnet to a perfectly flat surface, we actually had to set up in the machine shop across the street. We finally realized that our gauss meter had just broken, the probe snapped, and we ended up buying two separate ones. One was from the local place that has this analog setup, and there's also a digital one that came in from China, it just came in today. And we're going to try those out and try to figure out which Gauss meter is giving us the most accurate reading for the electromagnet, because the Gauss reading is critical for this experiment. But if you want to get a little bit into the drama of what's been happening.
Well, let me first. This was from last night, as we explained. I just want to fill people in who are just coming into this, because there was some people didn't watch the whole stream and just want a quick overview. 6 minutes in, we're still doing good. We set up we want to set up a lab and do some anti-gravity experiments, or just gravity experiments in general, for testing gravitation and the influence of mass on and different ideas. And one of the things we came up with was a relatively easy one to do ourselves. A physics experiment that we replicated from 1981 by Alzafon for Boeing Aerospace. So Boeing Aerospace has done quite a number of different studies, which we'll get into a little bit later. But this was a good spot, I figured, for us to kind of break into the field of experimental physics in this genre, and also review some important theory of NMR and the history of the classified research that's been done into nuclear magnetic resonance, and how the hows and whys of what atoms are, how they behave, and then also with metamaterials and some of these other quantum materials, how to get materials to actually behave like individual atoms, or how to get macroscopic materials to behave as if they were quantum systems, which I think really is going to be the key to unlocking this technology, the X technology.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting. You mentioned before in one of your podcasts that the one of the discoverers of EPR actually went on to work for the Black Projects.
This guy, Edward Mills Purcell, the guy who won the Nobel Prize for NMR, went on to head Project Rainbow, which was, of course, the CIA's main physics project at Area 51. So this is very real stuff. The physics that we're talking about is black physics that was hidden from. It's been hidden from the general public, and the research that I've had to do to find a lot of it has been through DARPA channels, and a lot of the restricted access, just where it's restricted to a certain number of people, and the only way I've gotten into it is just human intelligence, and meeting the scientists and talking to the people who are involved in it and then researched it, and finding their literature, and before the projects went black, because a lot of this stuff, we're not the only lab. We're the only public lab openly talking about this. But this is like, they can't stop it in the age of the internet. But we are being blacklisted and censored to a great extent of what's going with in the greater scope of things, because there's so much attention being drawn to other people, which I don't think is necessarily as close to the heart of disclosure and real disclosure of what disclosure is all about. Because
disclosure is all about little tiny changes that you make to an experiment.
So-
You figure out, what is that exactly going on, what interactions are happening, and how this experiment actually works. And we've actually come across 3 separate theories that explain why this.
Enough with the theories. We're going to have experiments. We're going to test all the theories with experiments in the lab. That's all coming. But I want to. Right now, we don't have time for that. We're not going to try and sit here and do a live really work in this lab to get a result, and then this is just the beginning of this machine that we've set up. It's really what's going to come next is the materials, which I've already been talking about this stuff, and I got an example of it too, so we can pull this apart on camera. This was a blade case that I had got that was old, and Jeremiah had mentioned that these security strips contain some of this metallic glass material. So I wanted to remove this and kind of examine this material a little more closely, because I'm waiting for that metallic glass stuff to show up in the mail.
Yeah, I can't guarantee you
Types
that
of
it's
material.
metallic
I don't think
glass,
this is
but
I can't guarantee this is an amorphous metal, but it certainly has a. This is not the piece. This one kind of folds. This one folds and doesn't have that springiness. But let's see if there's another one.
You should
of
be able to
these.
identify it by the pitted surface, but don't bend it too much, because if you do, you bend it really tightly, it may actually crack. These are probably a much older formulation, if anything. So.
Let's see. But I want to get that amorphous metal and do some experiment. I don't think that's the best thing to build our cavorite cavities out of for the EM thrusters or those quantized inertia drives.
Right now, we're working on dynamic nuclear orientation, and that works off of the Limor precession of the electron. And there's been a couple theories as to how it would work. We mentioned one of them, and this other team,
It's not the right stuff.
the institute, which
It
is
is
associated with
spring.
NASA, actually got.
I just
really
remember there was something
upset.
inside. See how one side's dull and one side's really shiny?
Yeah.
It's
There's different one. This is a different material.
well,
I
that's
wonder
a
how.
layer strip. Okay, I've seen ones.
Hey,
with,
when we
four
talk
layers,
to
too.
Wendolyn, who's the expert in metallic glass, I'm going to ask her if this is a metallic glass and if it is, and how it works. How does this thing form that RFID tag, and how do they deactivate it? Because there's other ones that emit a frequency, that's.
Yeah, there's coil types as well.
You want to get back to what we
But
were
anyways,
doing?
I want to talk about materials and stuff.
What about what happened this morning?
But more importantly, right, we have experiments coming, we have materials coming to the lab and things going on, but I want to talk about what happened this morning, because there's a lot going on with disclosure, and we want to talk about disclosure, because disclosure seems to be the topic that really everyone's interested in.
And
really,
disclosure is going to happen in a lab. Like, people are not interested in UFOs. And
no, if you want science, in order to convince Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye and Michael Shermer and get all those guys and all those talking heads that are blocking, the gatekeepers that are holding this thing up right now, in order to get them all to eat dirt and go running for the hills screaming, we need lab experiments. Like, there's nothing else. No super clear UFO video. None of that's gonna matter. The white. They're not. There's not gonna be any. Even the testimony of the best Top Gun pilots, all of them in the military could be saying it. It's not going to convince the scientific community. What we need for disclosure is the real science, and educating the scientific community about the black project and the black physics, and getting them to take it seriously.
And that's what we touched up on today, and
it is
we were
amazing
literally
what's
just
going on.
we were literally just shut down at this Estes Park.
We'll
conference.
get into that in a second. I want to talk about the Estes Park conference
first,
first, because I want to review the Estes Park conference. It's put on by James Woodward every year, and they invite propulsion physicists from around the world to discuss different theories of propulsion. And these guys caught the first 2 days. They actually presented some stuff yesterday that I didn't catch, because I came down late last night, and I've been here for today. But we'll get into some of those theories and some of the people who presented. Some of the top people, I believe, there though. One of them was a surprise that came in today. Was actually Jack Sarfati, and I was amazed to see Jack come in, and because he wasn't expected. No one really expected him to be there. But he talked about all about UFOs, and it's amazing that we have all these PhD physicists at the top propulsion conference. And they're talking. It's 2020, and they're all talking about UFOs, disclosure and stuff like
He
that.
was talking also about how the Joint Chiefs of Staff is actually very interested in the Tic Tac. They're trying to figure out how it works. They're also interested
He's just saying, why doesn't Chris Carlson
in
Tucker-
consciousness as well, and they really need to come down to our lab right now.
No, I don't want those people down here. What we need is Jack Sarfati to get on Carlson Tucker and start dropping some of this stuff to a wider audience and get more people interested in the ideas that he produced. So that was the key part of the conference. We got that on video. It was the part where Keith was talking about that 2011 paper that was released by Jack Sarfati, he's talking about slowed light, and what I've been talking about is slowing and trapping light, all that stuff. I said it's so important, and this came up at the conference, and this is what Jack said about it. Is he said that he wrote this thing in 2011 that said, well, if you slow down light, you realize that it creates this at that point where you're slowing down the light, it creates a cutoff point where the actual the speed of light is changed. So you have that changing of the refractive index, which is exactly what you need to create that Alcubierre warp drive effect. And he actually did the calculations for it. I have to get that paper. And that has a lot to do with this Alzaphan experiment with the spintronics of aligning the spin states and getting things all aligned in a spin state using magnets. So get Jack Sarfati on the news. He's one of the few physicists that really was into this. From back in the day, he's debriefed. He's already debriefed Putin's agents on all this. And they debriefed him at 2011 at that conference. What was it? The one where he met Mike McCulloch too, for the first time. That was down in Florida. It was the Worlds Conference. What was it?
I don't remember the name of that one.
The New Worlds something. I forget. He was in the thing, but I didn't go to that. But I had heard about this. It was, and John Brandenburg said he was there too. But that was in systems where they pump it up with a bunch of light trapped in a ball going, and they squeeze it. Squeeze coherent states. And Polariton condensates, some of the technical terms that I've found literature on in my own research that we were trying to bring up at the conference. We were gonna speak today, and I was gonna jump in and bring all this stuff up, and then Jack Sarfati came on right after us. Actually Brandenburg took the spot that we were going to have. They put Brandenburg on instead of us because right as we were about to speak, Amy, I've interviewed on this channel. A couple of people saw that interview from with Mark and Amy that we did a couple months ago with the NASA Insider. Amy was like Mark's connection. That was supposed to be our NASA Insider, and she was saying all this stuff about how she had disclosure, but she couldn't share anything. And then Mark had signed an NDA. I don't know. You got to tell the whole story about this because Mark and me split ways because we had a difference of opinion over Amy. Basically, the way I see it is that she joined our group and broke up Falcon Space, and a lot of the other members, including Todd Desiato, one of the key physicists who wrote papers with Hal Puthoff and all these people. He quit WhatsApp and stopped contributing to our group because of this person and the stuff that she's done. And I just want to talk about. I just want to put it all out there about what this person who I view as a NASA insider and someone who may be connected with people in the secret space program, according to her own words.
She's definitely connected with people in the secret space program. There's no doubt about it. I've dated her for about 2 months, and
all right, I'll let Mark tell the story.
It was a crazy ride. I view myself as like the king of anti-gravity because I'm, a young guy who's actually trying experiments.
You're the king of anti-gravity.
Whatever. She considers she considers herself the queen of anti-gravity.
She made a group on WhatsApp with me and you called Disclosure Messiah. Okay, so that give you an idea of the audience of what this woman thinks about herself. She made a group called the Disclosure Messiah. I don't know if that was you or not.
I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure that was her, but she's the Disclosure Messiah.
It's not that simple. She does run an institute. It's a public benefit corporation, and they deal with fringe sciences. And one of the things that they're doing off the record is this other stuff, this other fringe science, and she's actually told me a couple things on how to change this experiment to try something new. We haven't tried it. I alluded to it the other day and gave her full credit as she asked me to, and she gave us permission on text, in writing, to talk about this. She was planning on actually being the speaker today, and Jacques Sarfati came in and took her place. Chantel Butler was also scheduled to be the next one after that.
That's her partner in this institute.
Yes, Chantel is another girl that's involved. Spoken to her extensively. I've never met her. She lives in Canada. Also a brilliant girl. Amy, by the way, is extremely intelligent. You guys don't believe me on that.
She's the daughter of a NASA propulsion scientist. I never said she wasn't extremely intelligent. You just said that she's the most intelligent person you've ever met in your life, and I said that may be true for your case. But I lived in Cambridge and
I don't know. That's
at MIT and Harvard, and I
you.
met quite a few smart people that it's hard to say.
That's on you. So anyways, we mentioned the other day on the Estes Park conference that, hey, there's a couple ways of doing this, and Esker just gave me an idea. Todd DeSiato has his idea.
What I find is suspicious.
Alzafon has his idea, and I had my own idea, which I published over a year ago.
What I find suspicious
on why
is
this
that
experiment would work. And she took that as a cue that I broke an NDA or something, and jumped on in the morning at Estes Park when we were actually scheduled to have a call with Jim Woodward and give him updates from the lab. And the updates would have just been that we were having trouble with our Gauss meters. Today is going to be the Gauss meter wars, because there's several different Gauss meters and they're all disagreeing with each other. It's actually, the Hall effect sensor, there's several different problems. That's what we planned on talking about. But let me just show you what happened when we didn't even say anything. Somebody else suggested that we give our update. His name was Lance. Why don't you zoom in on the screen over there so they could see exactly what happened today.
So this was the Estes Park conference. Some of this is, we can't show you because it's proprietary, belongs to the conference and stuff. But man, did we learn a lot.
I know we have a few minutes before starting, but I saw Mark and Jeremiah. I wondered, I didn't know who they were, but they had some interesting comments, in the meeting, and there was some talk about some spin-induced change of weight. I wonder if they could give a quick introduction, or you could, Hal.
I'm going to wait until next time around for that one. I wanted to get to know them first, and I think I've got to know them a bit, but I think next time around it'll be good.
Jeremiah.
This time...
Well, they're on the call. They're looking at you right now.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know.
Yes, Lance, what you heard from them yesterday included content that directly breached an NDA they have signed with me. And they absolutely...
Amy, there's no such thing as an NDA for a law of nature, and it's been written about in several other places. I can show you.
You are incorrect, and you need to shut your mouth. You are in breach of NDA.
Okay, I'm going to shut you all up now. We're going to start the...
Okay, and I can actually show you on another page.
Wow. So basically, that's what got it. We were about to speak, and they were introducing us. I think, and I don't know if they were going to let us speak because they really want to get to know us better, and I didn't get a chance to meet any of these guys or talk to them. But I just wanted to show you that, like, the way that she chimed in and then said that. What's important and key here for everyone to understand is that NASA just said that.
They sent us a season to discuss order.
Yeah. They sent him a cease
through the institute. I mean, this is supposedly something that was developed in NASA, which is a public corporation for the advancement of humanity. And this person claims that he got it from NASA. He actually told me firsthand that Richard Eskridge told me firsthand that he actually got it from some investor who took him out of NASA, and he got it from a scientist over in Britain who posted it on some obscure blog, and their claim to fame is that the math was wrong and they corrected the math. I don't care about the math because it's not really applicable to what I'm doing over here with the proof of concept. I don't even know how I'd apply any math to it. It may be necessary for later derivations of how much power we need or something like that, but it really doesn't make any difference, and honestly we haven't done anything with it yet. And on top of all that, I have written text from Amy with the Institute that they were okay with us, talking about this at Estes Park. They were originally actually supposed to disclose it at Estes Park. This is the text message from her. Get your own ideas. If you use our advice, say so. If you copy paste my words, say so. And we agreed to that. So that's pretty much permission right there. And we did not breach any NDA.
But the fact that NASA is threatening you with cease and desist order over an NDA just goes to show, it's confirmation that, you know, that
the effect is real, and
It's
very,
real.
It's very important.
and that there's something going on with disclosure that people need to be more aware of. That's very real.
And Amy claims that they have this paper. I think Richard probably wrote it. I hope he did, because he is the top scientist on this level. So I understand. And it's supposed to be going through the publication channels of NASA and should be published within a month. To be honest, I have never seen the math. I've never seen much of their theory. All they gave me was one piece of advice that relates to this experiment that we have not tried yet. And if we try it and it works, we'll definitely attribute it to Eskridge and to the British scientists who actually theorized it in the first place. It's also been talked about in a couple other papers.
I don't think that's really what's going on, because they didn't expect Jack Sarfati to come on and drop all that bombshell about the slow light and the squeezed light. Man, that was a key thing that he talked about and Keith mentioned as well. And that's part of what I wanted to talk about, and where I think this all needs to go to, because obviously we need to look at UFOs for our inspiration of how they fly and their physical characteristics of these orbs and these glowing balls of light. That should be a cue to us as scientists of something to do with how they propel themselves and how they fly. And I don't think they're flying around with, you know, they don't. When in the descriptions of the craft from Roswell, remember the craft from Roswell, it had that memory foil, which was, I believe, amorphous metal or metallic glass, because it's off the charts in terms of its strength and flexibility in terms of material science.
While I agree with you on that, Jeremy, I think what you're dealing with is a very, very advanced version of anti-gravity. And in order to start, you really got to start with the Model T. You got to, you'll get to the Tesla, you'll get to the Rolls Royce.
But that's where we're leading up to, and that was some of the key theory that I wanted to share, and I wanted to get some of those other scientists' input on some of this stuff, which I don't think those guys really understood a lot of it. There wasn't the right.
I mean, to be honest with you, this year's Estes Park was all on Zoom, so we have the entire email list of everyone, and we could just start our own Zoom channel and be in contact with these people directly.
I think you should contact Jack and send him a copy of the video that we took of his part of the lecture. See if we can edit it up. I know we were cooking popcorn during it and a bunch of other stuff, so it's like, I'd like to get a good copy of that so that we can post it, because that was some key information that he was sharing. And I went actually back on Twitter to 2011 and started finding some of those tweets related to that, because it kind of like, he came out about that stuff and then he hushed up and he hasn't really talked about it. And I'm not sure, because he is very close with the Navy, and I'm not sure if they told him, like, don't talk too much about this, it's sensitive and related to some of the research and stuff. But he hasn't talked too much about that slow light stuff. It's only come out really in these private conferences that with a couple other physicists that he's like kind of like brought it up. He doesn't really like emphasize it or talk about it too much or draw too much a lot of attention to it, you know.
One other thing I wanted to mention, there's been a couple of times that I tried presenting or talking about anti-gravity at different conferences, and weird things have happened, and I started like developing these conspiracy theories about them. And people thought I was crazy at first. When I got to the top level of that organization and talked to the people that were actually involved, it was all correct. Just one example, MUFON came here. MUFON, yeah, came here to New Jersey in 2018, and I contacted them a little bit before they came, like a month or two before, and asked them why they weren't talking about anti-gravity. If they're truly after disclosure, then anti-gravity disclosure is really where it's at. It's all about the technology. And I contacted them. They suggested I speak to their lead science officer, Chris Cogswell. And I contacted Chris. He responded with an email showing lots of interest. Send me over your resume, tell me what you're about, blah, blah, blah. I responded almost immediately, an hour or two later, and the email bounced. Okay, now I'm trying to figure out what in the world's going on. Why is this email bouncing? And I couldn't get through.
A lot of those guys are watched, and they don't want them.
Just let me finish. This is very interesting. So I contacted him directly on LinkedIn, and he directed me to some news clippings that claimed that he left because MUFON was still supporting Jesse Ventre, who posted something anti-Semitic a couple years ago, and like complete and utter bullshit. It made absolutely no sense why he would leave a career over his organization supporting somebody who once posted something anti-Semitic. I'm Jewish myself. I don't give a shit. But that made no sense to me. To me, it sounded like they just didn't want anti-gravity talk in there. I wasn't even asking. At first, I asked to talk. I was asking for a booth. I would have paid to be in their vending area talking about anti-gravity. And I went down there to MUFON to their last day and just, was just poking around, got a couple pictures there, and I got this all on video. I went to the Q&A at the end of the conference and asked the panel of people what they thought of anti-gravity disclosure. Jan Harzan, who was the leader of MUFON at the time, answered that he was going to Estes Park, and he was all excited to meet Hal Puthoff, who didn't end up showing up at Estes Park. So that's when I first heard about Estes Park as this, elite conference of physicists that were involved with, anti-gravity technology. And so later on, when Jan was thrown out of MUFON, they posted something on Facebook, and I responded, and I eventually got in touch with one of the leaders of MUFON. His name was Steve Hudgens, and he's the international director of investigation and member of senior staff. And
so this is key, man. This is
and
his
an
show.
off-the-record
Someone's talking
conversation.
about conspiracy theories, right? Well, this is like conspiracy is a crime that real police investigators do real investigations, and when they do investigation, they put a bunch of drug dealers on a board and they draw those lines and they connect dots.
So let's just finish this. I spoke to Chris Hudson, who is the guy in charge, one of the guys in charge of MUFON right now, and he told me flat out, yes, the reason why Chris Cogswell left was because he was pushing for all these changes. We weren't ready for it. I guess there's an age gap between these people. They weren't interested in so much change, but they're coming around. They actually asked me to join their scientific advisory board for MUFON. Now, similar thing has happened with AlienCon as well. AlienCon was in Baltimore, and I asked for a booth.
Speaking position there.
Well, speaking position, forget about that. But
even
a booth,
Brandenburg was like
a booth. I was just asking for a booth. I would have paid money to show up at AlienCon Baltimore just to talk about anti-gravity.
You know what's funny about? I want to say something about AlienCon.
One second.
One quick thing about AlienCon.
Let's get
Brandenburg was standing room only, and they were like people out the door going in there to go to attend his conference, and they only gave him the small lecture hall at AlienCon. Jeremy Corbell was given the big fucking stage. It was friggin' empty.
That's because everyone's interested in the technology. That's all that fucking matters. Get that through your heads. All that matters is this.
That was all that matters. That was the key telling part of the sign of the times is when Brandenburg's conference was like out the door and they put him in the wrong conference hall. Okay,
so anyways, AlienCon Baltimore. What happened was I contacted them. I have all of this on email. It's probably going to be part of a documentary one day. But I contacted them, and they spun me in circles. Went from one place to another, safety and this and that, and then finally the conference just happened, and it didn't happen. We weren't able to attend or didn't want to show up just as a person. Then I saw that AlienCon was happening in Los Angeles, and I was kind of excited about that. And I went to the form to fill out for the, to get a booth, and I didn't make the same mistake I made last time. Instead of putting in Falcon Space Program as, the name of the company, which is kind of tells everyone that what we're doing, the autofill on my phone put in 1988, which is my birth year, into the name. So officially, 1988 is showing up at AlienCon. We got booth 515, which is like Area 51 over and over again. And incidentally, also 515 is the date I first met Amy. It was May 15th. Numerology, like insane. You should see my license plate. It says UFO knowledge, and that I got. It was the next one off the plate. I did not order that, but synchronicity is where it's key. And when I got to AlienCon and started setting up, the directors came over. The director of the whole hall there, and she was like, started to ask questions like, who are you? What are you doing here? This is not the company name that we signed up for. And then she snuck off and was having a conversation with some other executives, and they decided not to make a scene because we're already there. And some other interesting stuff that happened at AlienCon, I got on a line for a Q&A of one of the big panels, and I was the next in line. The person in front of me was talking about I don't know, it was werewolves and
know.
unicorns. It was some crazy shit. I was sitting there with a
They want to mix up the real science and the real like physics.
Yeah,
stuff
they
with
want
all
to
this
mix you with the kooks. But right when I got to the microphone, they shut off the Q&A, and
yeah, you would like they wouldn't let you.
yeah, and that was the same lady that was trying to keep us away from Brandenburg. By the way, she was like,
that was weird. Those people that were doing security. Someone told them something. Someone. It wasn't them though. They were just the.
they were being paid. They were being controlled.
Someone was controlling them at that security who worked at that place.
It was really strange, and the presenters were so curious about what I had to ask because I was, they were in a lab coat and I looked very official. They actually came to the edge of the stage to talk to me, and then I met them in a back room and asked them about Alzaphan. And one of the guys said, I worked on that for the Navy, and the results are classified. And so far with the Alzaphan experiment, we've had a lot of trouble with the linearity of the magnetic field, but every time I got it close enough, we have seen results up to 18% weight loss. It's on my channel. I cut out the 35 seconds that shows you, just turning the thing off, weight gain, back to zero. Turning it on, drops. And you change the frequency a little bit. It was all like frequency dependent and magnetic field dependent. You had to have
see how
everything
well our
perfect
Faraday
in order
cage
to work.
works. So I built the Faraday cage today too to help out over here. We got the
You got to be careful to keep the door open. You might lose your signal.
we got this Faraday cage. So I'm gonna. Why don't we close the door and see if I lose my signal, because that would be a good sign to show that it works.
No, let's not do that. Let's keep it.
I'll just lose it real quick. So here we are. You can see this is where I set up to do all of our experiments that require a Faraday cage. If you close that door, I'm sure we'll lose all the signal. Probably will go through that with the Wi-Fi.
I don't know. This is
sure.
a very special Faraday cage. It was actually designed by a PhD professor who stops by here sometimes.
Yeah, I met to meet him last night.
It's a capacitive layer Faraday cage, meaning there's an outer layer that's grounded to one 4-foot rod, and the inner layer is grounded to an 8-foot rod. And every square foot, there's another little capacitor that's drilled through the wood from the outside to the inside. And supposedly this is supposed to create a sort of dampening effect on really high power impulses, which is one of the things we want to try. With the gravitator experiment from T. Townsend Brown. Although we have had null results on everything, and Jim Woodward confirmed it as well, Jeremiah has tried that as well, the impulse version of that is something I'm very excited about. It is similar to Podklanov, and it also could explain the base of the ARV, the Alien Reproduction Vehicle, sort of has these parallel plate capacitors in the base of it. Maybe they just weren't charging it up to high voltage, maybe they were just impulsing it, and that creates some sort of electron rocket. That's sort of the theory that me and Jeremiah came up with as to how it works, that it actually produces thrust. It's not producing anti-gravity. It's not producing warp. It's more of a thrust. So Alzaphan is more about weight loss, or there's a whole bunch of theories about what
was a key thing, because that guy that came up to us and said they had positive results with it, and then you had gotten some positive results, and then you said signed an NDA with you, or made you sign an NDA with her.
It was a mutual NDA. We gave her some information too.
And then NASA's publishing a paper on this next month. Then this could be disclosure. You think? Do you think this could, or a step towards it anyway, or do you think this is going to be like some, it could be disinformation?
I don't think this is disinformation. The people that I've spoken to, the caliber that they're at, Richard Eskridge has written 49 papers, and he was the head of the Advanced Propulsion Lab. I do not think that I am overhyping this one bit. I think this is real anti-gravity disclosure. I'm very excited for Amy and Richard. I wish them all the best. I hope that their paper is sound and scientific. I would like to read it myself. I have never read it. I've never been privy to that. They just gave me one little piece of engineerable information that we were given permission also to try for the NDA. And we will try that in the lab, and as soon as she publishes the paper, I'll publish also my results with the dynamic nuclear orientation version of that experiment. I may also state that just like with everything, there's probably more than one way to achieve this effect.
Right.
You can.
I think this is just baby steps towards the understanding the quantum phenomena of information exchanges and entanglement.
Also, something that's interesting is that in order to enter a magnetic field, you need all the field lines to be of the same strength. So there's two ways to do it. You can either have iron on the outside, all directing its energy toward the center, sort of like we have, or you could do it the other way around, which would be electromagnet with the shape of your craft, and that shape of the craft will be the flying saucer that we all see.
So the question is, what effect? Well, you can look up, because there's a number of different effects that have been occurred now in almost experiments under a number of different conditions. We have the Woodward effect, or the Mach effect. We have which is James Wood put on the Estes Park conference, which is the big physics propulsion conference that we almost presented at, or almost were introduced to, but Amy kind of sabotaged that for us, unfortunately. And
nothing.
Well, it doesn't really. I don't think it's sabotage.
Nothing's been.
Everyone at that was like, holy crap! Well, why is she like? Why do these guys have an NDA with NASA, and that she's publishing this paper next month, and why is she so concerned with not letting them talk? And that piqued their interest, I think.
Yeah, we have all their email addresses. We'll probably go live when we're ready to.
They're going to discuss. They're going to start getting in touch with us, man.
And
those guys are a wealth of knowledge. They know a ton of stuff. But I really think that we're going to be able to build it. The material scientists and the experimental physicists that we have helping us between Tom and some of these other guys, I really think that, and myself, I think that we really have what it takes.
Yeah,
we're putting a company together. We're putting the right minds and the right people together, and the right materials and the right everything.
I mean, right now, what we really need is like a business administrator, like somebody who can take care of all the legwork and the paperwork and all that stuff. I'm not very good at that. I know you're not very. You're good at the PR.
I want someone that can
somebody with a
company
pretty.
And gain,
they need to have a
funding,
serious
money,
freaking resume. If you know anybody like that that's looking for work,
that wants to be part of this.
That wants to be part of this. This is probably going to be a multi-trillion-dollar industry.
No, I wouldn't say that. Dude.
It will definitely be
multi-trillion. If we start mining the asteroids, maybe, but let's take it baby steps at a time. If we do figure out alien technology and they don't kill us first, to prevent disclosure. Remember, we only have 124 people watching that actually care about this. They're too busy. There's football right now than care about disclosure and
That's so fucking sad. I mean, everyone on this channel should please like and share this video.
You guys are awesome. Anyone that's on
what's been happening today is really world changing, and it can't be understated what happened today and how important it is to the disclosure world. Also, we started a GoFundMe to try to gear up with lawyers to protect our IP interests. I do not believe that a fundamental law of nature is IP. It's not intellectual property. You can't have intellectual property on gravity, can't have intellectual property on electromagnetism, gravitational effects. You can't have, IP on that. And she clearly gave us permission to talk about it. She was planning on presenting. They didn't have their paper ready in time, which is very unfortunate.
Jack's presentation made up for that. Jack Sarfati hit the freaking ball out of the park. He said he'd just woken up and wasn't quite prepared, but man, he hit the ball out of the park. I never seen him put all the pieces of the puzzle together so quickly and clearly as he did today. In just the first 10 minutes of that, which we have a recording of. I gotta get permission to post that because it was key. He's really getting better at breaking it all down in the physics of these effects. He talked about a lot of the different effects because it's not just one effect. There's been multiple scientists who've reported it and coined different names for the effect, the Podkletnov effect.
Yeah, I think one of the problems in this industry is that people are all about their ego. They're like, oh, this is my effect, I get to own this, you know, when it's really, it's a piece of
And their
nature.
theory, and they
It's
want
a-
their theory to be right.
and they want their theory to
they
be
spend
right,
their
and they-
career proving a theory that's not, you know, just because it's theirs. And
Yeah, and we really need to get past that as a civilization. If it's right, it's right. And the description should be based off of the technology, not based off of the discoverer. I mean, a Wikipedia page can be dedicated to discovery and how it happened, but you know, we shouldn't be talking about Boyd-Bushman effects and Alzheimer's effects and, you know,
well, particularly
Asperger's
like,
theory and whatever.
We should be talking about that because I particularly like the theoretical physics, where theoretical physics is at with gravity and the different theories of gravity at the top PhD levels of theoretical physics, which is like a whole side that I come from and know a lot about, like von Ramsdijk and entanglement. You know, like there's a whole bunch of physicists writing about entanglement and how entanglement's related to gravity and how entanglement can explain gravity through different systems, but no one's come up with the real quantum gravity way to explain it and really link it all together and show it. And until some of these scientists may be close, though, that quantized inertia stuff that Mike McCulloch's been working on that predicts galaxy rotations without dark matter, I think is one of the is a good. It's definitely got some issues with theory. Unrow radiation and Rindler horizons have a lot to do with it, but it's really about it's about quantum states, and I think spintronics and the doing what we're doing with pulsed NMR is a good first step towards a window inside this sort of quantum world that's going to lead to quantum gravity. Because if quantum gravity is mediated through it, then certainly NMR experiments, which we're basically entangling a bunch of, we're getting them into a coherent state by bouncing them.
It's not exactly NMR.
It's a form of entanglement.
Nuclear magnetic resonance is hitting the what's that frequency? The frequency of the core of the atom, the way it the harmonic frequency of the core of the atom, getting it to a high energy state, and then you turn off the source, and then it goes back to its low energy state, and it releases some energy that you're able to view. That's how an MRI machine works. What we're doing over here is a little bit different. We're actually interacting with the electron field on the outside, which is directly correlated to the strength of the magnetic field. It's 28.5 gigahertz per Tesla, and that's the Larmor precession, meaning the precession that the electron spins at. The electron is moving around the atom at the speed of light, so it's spinning trillions upon trillions of times per second. But it also has a Larmor precession, which is the precession of the axes, just like Earth has a Larmor precession, which is around every 25,900
But in atoms,
years.
it's based around the mass of the atom on the periodic table elements.
That's
so
for
if
NMR. For EPR, which is what we're doing, magnetic resonance, hitting the electron, which is way higher in the gigahertz range. And that's why all this equipment over here that you see here is actually gigahertz or microwave energy. And
we're talking to electrons rather than protons.
We're talking to the electrons, and the electrons are transferring their orientation over to the core of the atom, and it's supposed to be a cumulative effect where you slowly orient all of the random spins of the core in one orientation, and by doing so, you can either detach from the inertial field, you can cause work on the gravitic field. Todd will have to explain his theory, and Amy has her theory about how it works and how to set it up.
Right.
And
Todd was a member of our group, and he wrote
Todd's also
papers.
watching this video right now.
He's watching the video. Awesome, Todd, you're the man, and I would really like to get you back on WhatsApp. And I'm sorry that.
no, he's back on. He's back on. We're back on at Falcon Space.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's just
dude.
the core. It's just the core people who actually do experiments with drama. Although the drama was very.
Todd's like top of his game on.
He's
theory.
not just a theorist. He's worked on.
He wrote papers with like Bernard Hayes and Puthoff and all those guys.
He worked on electromagnets a lot. Transformers. He was working with transformers, and he was recommending a certain type of metal. I mean, for this experiment, we don't really need to take it much, past what we're already doing. This is a proof of concept. The only things that from this experiment that will be usable in a lab that's actually building a craft would be probably the meters. Like everything else is probably going to end up in a museum or something like that. But yeah, we don't really need to work on the electromagnet anymore. The laminarity of the field, I think, is pretty good, right, Jeremiah,
Test
Within
it.
70, yeah, it's basically within
on
about
closer.
50 gauss with in 0% of the core to about 75% the total diameter. So
that's a pretty solid
yeah,
effect.
it's pretty solid. Because yeah, 50 gauss is not that much change at about 3,000 gauss, and we can tolerate that type of nonlinearity in this case.
Jeremiah, you want to jump in here and talk about some of the stuff that's going on?
Also, give a thanks to Colin Grant who donated 200 towards.
Oh
the,
God,
lab
thank you
essay.
guys, everyone that's throwing money down. We got
Yeah.
$200 in
He
the
said,
pot.
put it towards the lab. That was his.
That is
because
awesome.
he's seen the lab,
You guys are awesome. We can't do it without your help, man. And there's so many people out there that are contributing. We had one guy in the chat last night who was being a little bit of a pessimist and oh, you couldn't afford to hire me as a tech, telling us everything we're doing wrong, and then telling us we couldn't afford to hire him. I was like, then what are you doing, wasting your time? You're sitting in my chat watching my video, dude. Like, your time already. Why can't you just give me expert advice and help out? Like, and you have to, like, what's the deal?
I think it's just the ego. People just want to overinflate their ego, and the ego.
We're not
is
about that. If
destruction.
you
No.
get in the group, if you.
I mean, Jeremiah is a testament to that. We've had our differences, but it's always been like, I would share my idea, he would share his idea, and like, whatever idea just made sense, for the both of us. We just went with that, and nobody cares about whose idea it is. Ultimately, all we care about is getting the device working.
Yes,
that's
where
key.
the vision that the Wright brothers had when they had the bicycle shop, and everyone told them, including Lord Kelvin, that heavier than air flying machines were impossible, and that that they were wasting their time.
And they were up against the Smithsonian
The same
Institute, which
stuff.
failed. This is a perfect analogy of this. We'll turn the camera around a little bit. What I actually do for a living is refurbish hybrid batteries. You can see a lot of the modules over there. Yeah, I started this, like I said earlier, like about 9 years ago.
Paraglider and talk about that.
Oh, no, that's just a toy. So, yeah, I started this company about 8-9 years ago, and we're talking about high current, DC and AC to DC conversions. I had to do a lot of, on the job learning to learn, Ohm's law and all the related effects. And when I got into the first thing we tried, of course, was the high voltage stuff, because that was the cheapest and easiest. I got a pretty good professional rig with a voltage divider. It goes up to 100,000 volts, and a power supply that goes up to 125,000 volts. The biggest problem we've been having is dielectric breakdown on the cables. And me and Jeremiah have actually worked on these things together. Jeremiah, you want to come over here and join the video? We actually.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get the comments over with me. Do I have enough charge?
The comments are showing up over here as well. You can.
Yeah, I know, but I also can't. I guess if you can read them here.
Yeah, you can read them. If anyone has.
Can yet.
If anyone has any questions, that will pop, we'll be glad to to give you an answer if we actually know the answer. That is. So this is Jeremiah Pop. He flew in from Milwaukee. He's also helping with Falcon Hybrid. We're working on some piece of equipment that needs to be repaired and rebuilt. And we're doing anti-gravity on the side. And honestly, the anti-gravity stuff is a lot more exciting than making gas engines run a little bit more efficiently. But yeah, that's literally been it's been my life for the past 2 years, and this is like coming on the climax of what this technology is capable of. Just like a solid proof of concept for the world to show that, hey, this will work. This is how it works, and here's the weight loss. So far, we got 18% weight loss. You can see it on my video in Falcon Space Program. We did live stream the entire thing, but unlike videos like this where we can talk forth and just go over very quickly and get all excited, actual experiment takes a very account. So it's a lot as exciting as just watching a live stream like this.
No. Or the video that we'll put out, which is like all of like 14 days of work, or weeks of work condensed down to 14 minutes or 4 minutes.
basically passion. I'm actually getting into.
Oh, so they said about the mechanical scale. Why don't you show them the mechanical scale that we kind of...
Oh, it's not a mechanical scale, actually. It is a digital scale, and it shows up on my computer, actually. Let me just finger ID it.
Yeah, I want to show people a little bit more about... Here, why don't I just pull this out of here, and... Here, I'm going to take that with me,
Oh, okay.
and we're going to walk around.
Why don't you just hook it up to the battery so you have...
So...
Oh yeah, Mark's got a phone battery, dude.
It's the wrong kind of connector, so...
Oh, no problem.
There's a vernier force meter caliper, and it's hooked up to this multiplier leverage
It has a
system.
brass rod connected with bushings with little bearings that are integrated into the wood. And we're using fishing line because we found it to have the least amount of stretch capability. It's like 40-pound fishing line, threaded, and it goes into a sample holding chamber over there. And this is the force we're reading right now. It needs to be zeroed, but it is pretty accurate. It's not really supposed to show much right now. The numbers you
That's
see
just
moving
the
around,
error.
that's just those are just noise which are inherent in the system. Just breathing on the thing can create a large effect. And because of the multiplication factor, the number that you see over there is greatly multiplied over what the piece of equipment actually, the sample actually weighs.
Yeah, Todd Desist, who's a member of our group, has written several white papers, and Jack Sarfati has also, not a member of our group, but one of the inspiration scientists who you could check out some of his work as well if you're interested in the white papers. Someone just asked about. So, yeah.
A couple things, like if there's any engineers out there that are interested in our setup, a couple of things you got to look out for is when you're dealing with a force meter, they usually use a piezoelectric effect in order to detect the weight. So it's very important that you isolate the scale itself from the RF.
Yeah, that's why yours is wrapped in grounded in tinfoil.
Yeah,
Or
like we
whatever.
have to have a tinfoil hat for our scale. They're making fun of tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists. But,
Yeah, because they're not grounded. You have to be grounded in order for a Faraday cage to work. It just it doesn't work if it's not grounded.
Yeah, and you have to protect the equipment. And anybody who's dealing with this type of stuff really needs to take care of protecting themselves from the RF. It can cause cataracts in your eyes.
Well, yeah, the dangerous thing is, yeah, this thing right here. See this microwave horn. That's the why don't we show off this? This is the new piece. This wasn't attached and wasn't set up last night. So this is a key part of the Alzheimer experiment. If you read that paper that we showed in briefly in the beginning.
All right, so let me show you what's going on here. Tilt the camera a little bit more.
Yeah.
So this right here is actually the antenna. The antenna is only about like a quarter or an eighth of an inch thick. And it's all inside of this tuned cavity where the microwaves go in. This is an isolator. It's a magnetic device that makes sure that the RF is only going out and it's not bouncing back into the amplifier. If you don't have this and your SWR, your standard wave ratio is too high, you can end up burning the amplifier. We have a traveling wave tube amplifier, and
I just want to look inside the friggin' end of this thing. That's the looking down the barrel, right?
that's looking down the barrel of. I mean, if this thing was on right now, your phone would be blasted with so much energy. It'll start clicking buttons, and you might even burn out some of the.
It'd probably wreck my phone. I wish we could set up on my old phone and do an experiment. Just.
Actually, the other night, Tom was here, and he had this tiny little camera, and he was talking about setting up a tin hat, and I thought, like, he was joking, of course, but I thought he meant a tin hat for the camera so you can stick it.
No, when we had this thing out, man, I was dangerous. I was hiding in the Faraday cage last night while you guys were running the experiment.
And we had shields over our head. The magnetic field was not.
Well, we're gonna move this whole thing inside the Faraday cage,
Yes.
but we didn't really have time to do it, and you can't really see as much.
And he really busted ass this morning and put the Faraday cage together, the entire inside of the Faraday cage. All the components were there. If we didn't have anybody to just staple it together, it's looking fucking beautiful right now. This experiment, and we'll update you guys probably live on YouTube. We'll show you exactly what happens with the Alzifon experiment. As we power it up. But first thing we want to make sure is that we got all the ingredients correct. Ingredients being mainly laminar magnetic field, and that you're hitting it with the substantial amount of RF, that your scale is correct. You're not dealing with any.
And then that's the rig where it just kind of sits in there and gets measured.
Oh, so let me explain what's going on over here actually. So the sample needs to have a little bit of iron in it. It's actually 97%, 97.5% aluminum powder and 2.5% iron powder, and these are extremely small. They're way down in like the nanometers. They're tiny little particles, and the problem is because there's a little bit of iron in it, it tends to like want to turn to the side when we power it up.
Yeah.
So we had to build this little rig with the the fishing line, and there's calibrated weights on the bottom, even weights of clay that we're using, that basically allow us to make sure that this thing will slide very nicely. And as you can see over here, it slides almost frictionless inside the device. And check the scale right now.
Got the slides with the guys.
Show them the scale. I just want to show them.
Yeah, let's see if we can get it all.
You see that reading on the scale. That indicates, a complete loss of weight, complete weight loss. There is epoxy in this mixture, which we don't expect to lose weight. So this would be the maximum possible weight loss if the plastic lost weight and if everything else lost weight. This should be going back to zero now with a bit of shaking, because it is shaking, of course. And that just shows that our scale is working properly, which is pretty important. The scale is the science. It shows us, the number that we're getting. We do have a backup scale and a secondary system using a fulcron. In this orientation, we're able to stick it directly into one of those, flat plate scales. Jeremiah really likes using those. We have used that in the past. We got a positive result with that as well, but only when all of the ingredients were correct.
Right.
We sat there for an hour and a half futzing around getting no results on a sample that we thought was right until we realized, it didn't have any iron in it. It was just pure aluminum. It was one of the early samples we made. So after that, we swapped it out with a different one. And
Man, how do people get in touch with you if they want to follow up on your story about, this cease and desist order by NASA and then this NDA and the fact that NASA is about to possibly make disclosure and then sent you a cease and desist order to prevent you from speaking to other physicists today?
Well, there is a GoFundMe that we just set up for, the disclosure.
You need a legal defense.
Yeah, we're putting together a legal defense fund. It's on GoFundMe already. You can put a link to the GoFundMe page in the description.
Can you post some links? Let me go post some links to the Alzafon stuff on this.
Post some links
people
to
keep
the
asking about
Alzafon
it
stuff as well.
in the live chat. Can you do that? Jeremiah, do you have all the links to that stuff? Can you post those?
I do not have the links to that.
I can find that stuff. I can find it.
Sure, it's available.
I know where to find it. You can go to
Todd's also in the chat. He may already
Yeah.
have links to all that stuff.
Todd. Also is the
Todd
guy you
did
can
not
ask.
know about Alzafon, as he said. He figured this all out on his own. Todd actually has a different theory, so maybe he can present
Show people how to
his
spell
theory,
it.
and it will be an alternative way of maybe approaching the problem.
Anti-gravity with present technology. It'll show up right away on a Google search, or maybe not. I don't know. But we found it.
Unless they're trying to hide it again. It disappeared for a little while.
Yeah, it's on a couple of sites right now, and if you're really interested, and you can always contact us. We'll send you a PDF copy. If anyone wants to get involved with this stuff, we're still open to investors and talking about
Contributors. I really just I don't want money. I'd rather just like someone that said like, you give me a list of I want like a sugar daddy that I just say, hey, like, can you buy us this? And he's like, all right, sent, and it's in the mail, and then it shows up. You know what I mean? That's what we really need, is someone that really wants to see it happen, and is, even someone that wants to, fund it discreetly and doesn't want to be, some billionaire that's like got lots of money but doesn't want the other people to know that he's really funding this kind of stuff. But a lot of those people we found is like they're all greedy freaking bastards who are just in it for the money and the capitalism and to capitalize off it, and they're not about that. That's no way to get to disclosure, because every time you get involved in something like that, what happens is the can gets put on it, and then they say like, oh, you can make all this money, and they get the dollar signs in people's eyes. and then the disclosure doesn't happen. That's why.
That's
why
what happened with Alzaphan, actually. According to
this
his son
happened to
David,
a lot of people. This was happening.
they
happening
replicated
right now.
this experiment using much more professional equipment than what we have over here in 1994 in the basement of a physics department at some college, and they got 80% weight loss almost immediately. And the whole project fell apart because all the egos got involved. Everyone wanted a bigger piece of the puzzle of the pie of a company that never existed. And they're all going on and on about their IP and this and that. When in reality, this is all ancient stuff. This stuff has been around 10,000 years ago as well. This is how probably it relates to how the pyramids were built. You know, how the sea was split for the Jews. All these ancient stuff that goes on, you know, way back in our history is all related to some sort of science. And I think from what I've seen so far, it's definitely related to this, to the orientation of the core of the atom. And basically, we're trying to make coherent matter. We're, like light that comes out of an incandescent light bulb is incoherent. It's all the wavelengths are all mixed together and they're all interacting with each other. And then you have a laser light that's coherent.
Laser, cue. That's your cue.
Yeah, turn on your laser. He has a crazy powerful laser that we're using to light cigarettes.
Time to
And
show
If you
off
don't want to burn out your fancy camera gear with that retardedly bright and way too dangerous.
shine in a different direction. You just get the beam path going through here. They can see exactly what we're talking about. But lasers are
It
coherent
is like
light.
a welding arc, though.
It's
Well,
very.
it is as far as power density and brightness. Yeah, it probably is photonically as bright as a welding arc in the area where it's focused.
Yeah, I don't want to
Maybe
burn out
brighter.
my brand new camera. With
What
that.
about T. Townsend Brown?
Cool,
You
show
can
up.
go to the Falcon Space Program YouTube channel. We actually had we have a lab in Vietnam, Nam Tran, who tried some experiment that he claims got positive results on, you know, a couple grams weight loss with the gravitator experiment from T. Townsend Brown. We tried it over here, and basically what we believe he got was based on his lead hookups.
We also had Frollo in our group for a little, the Frollo's hat, that experiment, which is similar to the QI.
Here I've got some of those.
That
drawings.
didn't work as well, right?
Nah, he turned
Well,
out
and
pretty
I
good.
also
don't know.
I tested it with City
Hey,
State DC.
But people ask me what the end goal is, and why don't you just show them your T-shirt so that we can kind of like this word right here would be the end goal. It's
Eat, sleep, propulsion, engineering. We're trying to build a flying saucer. We're trying to literally take humanity to the stars. And if
I
you
want to
want,
be free. I want to go to space and
Oh, I have so
meet aliens if they're out there.
Drawings.
I think we're all aliens. We're reincarnated aliens. We're
Okay, here we go.
I don't
So
want to get
that's
into that, but I really want a UFO, and you know, like as far as UFOs, I'm not interested in your UFO theory or your abduction case or UFO story. I really just
unless they told you how it works. If they told
Right,
you how it
well,
works, get on the channel right now.
this was the drawing of our
I want a
forefathers
UFO.
had, basically.
I want to know how they fly, and I want to be able to fly one, and that's really all I care about at this point. And I actually got a letter back. I wrote to Tony Robertson, who's headed like SpaceIF and STAFE and all these propulsion conferences. Yeah, this is the Frollo's hat.
So that's the one that we tested. I tested that at 88 kV. I tested it segmented, or sequentially, I should say, up the voltage ramp to see if it responded
So
at
this
all.
is by far from our first experiment.
We've tested
we
eight
checked-
brown stuff, and I would call Frolov in the same category of brown. Where
Do you
it's-
think we're like, so if
You know,
we were to
divergent
do a
electric
time
fields.
scale chronologically, we started back with the T.T. Brown stuff, which is the 1920s, you know, initially, you know, which continued through the 50s, and with a lot of the, you know, the X-plane, the nose cones on the you know, the Chuck Yeager's plane had an electrically statically charged nose cone, which kind of like took some of the bow shock off the front bow, which helped with them to break the sound barrier. So they kind of used some applications of T.T. Brown effect, even with top secret X-plane and X technologies, going back to the 50s. With that, we didn't really do any supersonic experiments or anything, but we did build some lifters and do a lot of those experiments. Would you say that we've, you know, gone through the 50s and 60s? We're actually at the 1980s now with this, you know, like where they were at?
No, I think the 50s, the ARV was built in 1954, and it is some variation of the Alzfon experiment that both Richard Eskridge and David Alzfon both told me about. There's another way to achieve the effect. But there was technology even back in the 50s that, with the right know-how, they could have built a flying saucer. So it's completely, within the scope of reality to say that it was built back then.
Well, I'd really like to see more evidence of that, because if it was built back then and it was to be able to recreate it in our lab now, and
yes, we
should have seen something. We should already have it.
Yeah, we should already have it, and the question is why we don't have it. And I think the reason is because there's lack of people like us. Like, you live in Rhode Island, I live here in New Jersey. He lives in Milwaukee, and we've been scouring the web.
There's people like us right here that got tons of $500,000 in funding to do this experiment.
But no matter how much money you're given, money can only take you so far. In fact, money is not always the important thing. Just to give you an example, we've been looking for a traveling wave.
Yeah, we've pretty much done what took NASA what took Boeing $500,000 to do. You guys did with how much?
Let me just tell you, this is one of the craziest things that happened to me. So we were trying to get a traveling wave to amplify our signal generator. And we contacted this company here in New Jersey called Test, who supposedly has all this stuff, and they only had it in a different frequency, so we would have had to buy all different other, horns and different, stuff to accommodate that different frequency. It was a totally different band, larger waveguides and whatever. And then I looked on eBay once and I saw one for $1,500, and I put in an offer and got it. Turned out it was broken. So I returned it and got my money back, but I found another one up there, and I emailed the guy and I told him I already made my money back from this lot. If there's any problem, I'll give you a refund. So he sent it out to me. I bought it for a couple $100, sent it out to me. It turned out it was broken. It didn't even turn on. And I immediately emailed him, and he sent me back a refund right away and said, just keep it up for spare parts. And when a turn on at all, it's usually a lot simpler than when it turns on and doesn't work. So I started getting into the manual, and this manual is very well written. It includes schematics and troubleshooting through the wazoo. It actually told you what pin to connect to what on a potentiometer to figure out what is going on. I was able to find the burnt out component. Traveling wave tube amplifier was free. So you don't need money really. You just need to ask the universe for, hey, I want anti-gravity, and it sometimes just comes. And we're looking for more people like that. Jeremiah's been an amazing asset.
You got to work for it. It's not just going to come instantly. You can't just throw on a lab coat and be like, hey, I'm a scientist.
No. Actually,
Look, I have a lab. Work is done.
I'm a real scientist, guys. I just started doing this yesterday, right? It's not like I've been doing this on my own for over a decade, and getting laughed at by a lot of people who said I was crazy.
Yes, I've had a lot of that, especially recently.
It was kind of funny that one of the top propulsion conferences today had there was so much talk of UFOs among so many of the members that presented there. Brought it up. It was a subject that kept coming up. And so it goes to show you that PhDs are taking this more seriously, and it needs to spread to the rest of the scientific community, because it's the only way we're going to grow and evolve as a species, is if we take these things seriously and look into them and throw more serious money. And look at all the money we're throwing at dark matter and looking for the Higgs boson and stuff. It's like, well, the Higgs boson could explain gravity, but why are we throwing money at stuff like this, which we're also trying to test gravity? We're trying all these different things. Is gravity mediated by entanglement? So how do we change entanglement or increase entanglement to test the effects of gravity, things that are change entanglement? All these different theories.
One interesting thing about entanglement is that you're splitting a subatomic particle in half, and then both things are now entangled. Think about how we formed. We are stardust. We were created in a supernova explosion. So if our components were made in a supernova explosion, which is like sort of a singularity, there's a lot of quantum entanglement going on with our own bodies and on our own planet. So quantum entanglement is everywhere, and in order to detach from that quantum entanglement, you need to literally look at the spin of the atom, and that's where EPR comes in. NMR might have the same effect, but from there was actually a UFO report that's dived into deeply in the David Alzafon's book. David being the son of it's not
I
Richard.
haven't read the book. It's
Frederick Alzafon. Frederick Alzafon is the father. He has Till, and David Daniel has been working with Hathaway, I believe, on this experiment. And David wrote a book about it, which is sort of an homage to his father. But one of the interesting things that David said about it was that, here you got the book. This is the book that was written by David Alzafon. We actually spoke to him on the phone recently, and he goes into it's basically like a wet dream of what would happen if this technology becomes real. We are one of the first people he's ever spoken to that are seriously replicating this experiment out in the open. He's given us many, good pointers, good ideas, things that seem trivial to him, such as, the fact that the sample warmed up pretty quickly. Things like that, might seem trivial to him, but to us that means that the power levels.
We got to we got to change our. Maybe the heat is being caused by the materials being too insulated, like we said, using an epoxy versus a magnesium oxychloride cement, which
see, now we're getting on the same page.
Now we're getting into
really discussing some of the dynamics of exactly how we're conducting this experiment, and I know for sure that we need more power. Absolutely. Should we get some kind of an effect, if it's going to happen at all with lower power, assuming that it's not some kind of an exponential scale, we wouldn't really see much of anything down where we're at. If it is any kind of dynamic system, we might get something, but we're going to find out. We're going to see if the stability that we're taking for our weight measurements is sufficiently satisfactory. So right now it looks really good. In fact, it's better than it's ever been as far as the scale setup goes. The return to zero, the hysteresis for the current sample holder, which was a major issue before because of the tilt, that torsion that's exerted on that iron-containing sample by the electromagnet itself. That was a major problem, creating friction in the prior mounting mechanism for the sample holder, and it was causing a major hysteresis when the thing would run. It would not return back to zero properly, and now it's dropping right back down within a very, very small percentage of where it should be every single time. So I'm confident in that part of the test. We're going to have to see what it does under the performance of the RF. We just connected a slightly different ground, but it should be totally sufficient as far as nullifying out the RF field that might affect scale readings. So we'll be finding that out later. We're finally set up, and I think we'll be able to run that test soon.
One other thing I wanted to say about this book is he goes into detail about a UFO encounter that happened with an AWACS plane. AWACS is from the military. It's the radar
warning and control system.
Right, and this one actually had more advanced radar scanning and scanning equipment, and it had a whole bunch. It's basically a flying laboratory. And when this UFO showed up, they were noticing a very strong 2.995 gigahertz pulse coming from it that was happening every couple milliseconds, which is indicative of Alzafon, because that's exactly what we need over here. Not that specific. The frequency is correlated to the strength of the magnetic field. So you have a weaker magnetic field, which I would expect you'd want in a massive craft. Strong magnetic fields are hard on many different objects. So if you had a weaker magnetic field and you had a lower frequency gigahertz, you probably have the same effect. That's yet to be seen how the efficiency scales with the different, Tesla strength, the magnetic strength, and Larmor precession, how the efficiency changes in its weight loss or inertial mass cancellation. We're trying this experiment at 9.5 gigahertz weight loss. We want to replicate that first. If we continue, we're probably going to move on to more higher power setups that are already commercially available, such as klystrons to create the pulses, and high voltage power supplies. And these are things that are much more efficient. Klystron is efficiency is way up in the upper 90s percentile, and it can throw out like megawatts of power of RF. That's why we have the Faraday cage that will absorb all of that, and hopefully we'll get some results in those configurations as well, and get maneuverable craft. There's a couple theories on how it works, and we're going to try to differentiate which theory is correct. And not all the theories are even mutually exclusive. Interesting. You could have two different effects coming from the same experiment with just little orientation changes.
That's what I'm saying.
Little, little changes to the experiment that can produce something else. So if that's the case, that will explain a lot of how these UFOs fly. And it could always be a combination of several different effects. You could have the Woodward effect in the base, to create a thrust. You could have light. There's probably a ton of different hybrids.
Well, that's what we talk about with all my page on anti-gravity project. Skyvault, like microwave propulsion, beam propulsion, ion propulsion thrusters, and all these different types of propulsion that NASA's researched over the years and that have come up at these DARPA conferences, and that DARPA and NASA have thrown research funding at to try and explore new ideas. Is that some of these will work in an atmosphere and some of them won't. Alcubierre warp drive is great for deep space. That's how we get interstellar to go star to star. But it's really not what you need for in traveling in an atmosphere and creating a craft that flies on Earth and produces
I'm not certain about Alcubierre warp drive, what it actually works. It's a great math experiment that they've worked on, and they keep on changing the math and the amount of exotic matter, which apparently doesn't even exist. Keeps on changing.
It's already been, all that exotic matter stuff's like, people, I thought we've been beyond that for 2 years now, because Jack Sarfati needs to get on friggin' Tucker Carlson, man. That needs to happen. Like, he needs to get on some of these shows, or at least some of these other guys. They need to be covering this on mainstream media, and they're not. This is a big story. It's like you're basically getting told to shut up, and you've been prevented from talking at a propulsion conference by NASA, and like this should be bigger news than it. It's not like, and then people are saying, "Oh, is this a clickbait video?" It's like, no, this is the real deal. This is a glimpse inside this world that you're getting, and it's a rare one that not a lot of people get to see, except for the people who attend these conferences from the inside and don't have a lot of
So here,
We're
Jack.
reading the comments right now.
Yeah, show us something floating.
Okay, we can provide that.
Oh, we can show you something floating.
Yeah,
that's not going to float anything right now.
No.
Even in our creative streams, I don't think it will show anything floating. And if it does, it'll be inside of a
I'll
tiny
be right
little-
back. I'll show you something floating.
Yeah, we'll show you some stuff that float. Get out the Harry Potter
What's
one.
he got? What's he got?
We got lots of stuff that
Hold
are
on,
floating.
just let me see what Jeremy's got something, I guess.
We had a challenge to float a feather.
Which is ironic because, while he was being challenged to float a feather, we were playing around with that a while back. So let's see, just put this in place. So there is a feather. It's supposedly an ostrich feather. I bought a bag of them off eBay.
We turned off all the fans in here, right?
They're great because they have a nice wide surface area. And this is the 130,000 volt handheld voltage multiplier that I just call the Electric Magic Wand. And so you can squeeze out on the trigger anywhere here and activate it. You can see the ionic charge. And if I put my arm here, you can also see the coronal discharge flowing as a purple corona there. Anyway, so the electric fields, obviously, like any electrostatic device, will in fact allow you to levitate lightweight objects with a reasonably high surface area. There we go. Yeah, once the ions start to stick to it, you have a little more control over it.
Wow, check that out.
Are you not entertained?
When Guardian was
It's a fun little demonstration. Now, this was not built as a bar gig or magic prop. It was actually made because I wanted the ability to move around a high voltage electric field in 3 dimensions with my hand in a way that would be safe to operate. So besides the small amount of X-rays which are produced due to the high voltage electron cascade effects taking place, which are negligible really at the kind of current that I'm pumping through this system, it does offer a great tool to operate. And then this is the other gadget, of course, that
This is going to become commercially available.
we
soon,
had to
right?
bring it on. So this is the Tiny Titan that I've shown on the live broadcast before. And Jeremy's got a much better camera, so we can actually kind of see what it looks like.
Can I turn off the lights?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to.
Okay,
The
I'll check.
lights.
I have no idea.
What's that running off for power?
Okay, yeah. So this is basically here's a tiny little battery pack. It has
Oh, yeah.
3 lithium polymer batteries. Each one is 280 milliamp hours. So it is not a particularly large battery. I'm just going to see if I can get this sucker to connect to Bluetooth. Oop. Okay, let's shut that down. And go ahead and try the Bluetooth.
That thing felt so weird, man.
It's heat and it's the high frequency. So
Yeah, the high
Let's
frequencies,
show them
the
this
way
as
that
well. This
feels
is
on my
a,
fingers, man.
This is a little apparatus that
Yeah, that's
uses
right.
the diamagnetic properties of bismuth to
You have to
float
get
a
that really
magnet. I'll
close
probably get a
to
little
the-
closer.
Get
Really
close.
close. Really close.
Where is the?
So has your camera on, Jeremy? Yeah, illuminate from the back. Turn it, Mark, so you can see without the pegs in the way. You see how these pegs holding it up? There you go.
You can see it's kind of floating over there. Basically, principle of the bismuth gives it a small spot where the magnet is actually stable. This will stay floating pretty much indefinitely until the magnets lose some of their power, and then you have to readjust it. But it's not anti-gravity. It's just a little cool demonstration, desktop demonstration of the diamagnetic properties of bismuth. Bismuth is one of the materials we plan on using in the EPR experiment. We're going to be mixing it with magnesium, a little molten Howe's sample that she claims came off a UFO. We want to see how that mixes. We want to see how bismuth mixes with iron in this thing, because iron is the catalyst that allows the dynamic nuclear orientation to happen. And with bismuth, I'm very, very interested to see what would happen with that. We also had a couple other different materials that we're trying. I think the number of samples is up to like 28 or something like that. And we have a chart of all the different types of materials that we're using. Apart. One second. I'm going to show you the samples. Here, Jeremiah.
sucks that people have to wait a whole
Just
hour
hold on,
to
Mark.
see
You're
the
getting
cool
jumped ahead of
stuff,
yourself
man.
again because the lights are off, and we'll show those in a minute. So
Let's turn the
let's
lights
finish
back
the
on.
demonstration, which
Okay,
is
go
why
ahead.
we shut the lights off in the first place.
Okay.
Yes.
Here, I'll sound the
Wish I
background.
could turn it back on.
I'll sound.
Yeah. This
background
is
so
like
that-
sucks that people
It
have
may
to
or may
wait a
not
whole
work. I
hour.
just installed a Bluetooth module in this because I'm trying to give it wireless capabilities without threatening people's phones because of the high voltage field. So I figured Bluetooth is probably a convenient way to get the signal into this thing and act as an interrupter. So we'll see if it works here.
We got some interpreters from
Okay, so it does in fact operate then pretty well. So I'm still working on the Bluetooth interface. It's something I'd like to integrate. Right now it's made of several different boards, and what I'm doing right now for the kit development is getting everything on one board. So the knobs, the Bluetooth, the inductors, and the power handling. So that's coming. That's something that's coming, and it will probably be a little while before that happens. But we're trying. It's one way to offer something in return for funding that will actually move us forward and allow us to afford equipment, parts, and
Sell cool toys for parlor tricks for people to have at home, like your magic wands and those things.
It's
you know?
fun. It's a fun way to get into science without necessarily having to invest all the time in power electronics and engineering. Plus, it's a safe way to learn some of the higher energy electronics because something like this, there's no high voltage anywhere in this. It runs off 12 volts straight out. It doesn't have any kind of a high voltage amplifier circuit. So the only high voltage that comes out of here is in the form of high frequency, extremely low current off the top load. And although it's dangerous in the form of its heat, it's not dangerous in terms of its power output. So it can't, say, electrocute you. It could burn your skin, but it can't actually zap you.
There's a light control over here as well, so you can control the brightness of it.
Yeah, that's kind of bright. Why don't you turn that light back on?
I'll turn the lights on. Back on.
Yeah, let's turn the
Got
lights
that
on.
noise that are perfectly suitable.
You guys are not very nice to Mark.
Yeah.
Mark's like the lab, he's like the lab rat.
Mark will be
He's our guinea pig.
fine, I promise.
He'll be perfectly fine,
He can
guys.
handle it.
He can handle it. Mark's a big boy. He can handle the pressure.
What pressure are you talking about?
Someone said we're not very nice to you in the group, so.
Oh yeah, I don't really care about that. Everyone's just so excited to talk that we're all talking on top of each other. I won't take much of an issue with any of that. Be nicer.
Be nicer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, we're all.
I am really the person who spearheaded the whole lab effort, getting everyone together. Jeremy has really been the connection who's gotten all the famous people together and made all the connections. Just being on the internet for so long, even if he talks about such some stuff that ended up being disinformation, I'm sure we're fed to him. Ultimately, he's willing to talk about anything.
Dude, I fought in the trenches for years before anybody was talking about this stuff. I had to hash that stuff out. You know what I mean? You have to hash.
Are full of disinformation. That's what the trenches of this battle are. It's full of disinformation. Now it's going into the legal battle. They're trying to shut us up with a fucking lawyer, which is insanity. Like, you do not own a law of nature. There's no way to own a law of nature. It's been talked about in other papers as well, which we'll be providing.
NASA will not block anti-gravity disclosure, guys. Let's not let them have this. They're not gonna. It's not gonna go down like that. I'm not gonna sit by idly and not do anything and watch my friend get thrown on the bus for trying to get the truth out there, information out there that doesn't belong to anyone. And all we were going to do is present Alzaphan. We weren't going to even talk about the tweak or the other or any of the other stuff that was proprietary. I don't even know anything about it. Mark hasn't told me anything, so he has not broken his NDA.
I mean, she said it herself that as long as we give them credit for it, even though they, according to Richard himself, he doesn't deserve credit because it came from somebody else. But I am interested in the math that Amy keeps alluding to. I'm not sure I will understand it. I am not a math major at all, but I do have many friends, including Thomas Schoenhorn, who's a PhD in math, who will be coming by probably later tonight to help with the experiment. And we're going to be looking over that paper ourselves and see what we think of it. And we can try all these experiments. You could write down all the papers you want, but until you have an experiment that shows how it works.
I want to talk more about how they like your experience with this and the blocking of disclosure, because I think that's important. People, you said some things to me earlier we didn't really talk about in the live stream, right? So, my question was about the. My question to you was about Jan Harzan. You said you had some stuff on. You were talking. You knew about the Jan Harzan thing, and why don't you talk about that? Because that was.
I prefer not to talk about that. That's actually a personal matter. But I did know that Jan was very horny, before it came out, and I, had no information that he was, going after little girls or something like that. But I did know that he was a very horny guy, and wouldn't think twice about cheating on his wife or something like that. But
he was going after like underage girls and meeting them on the internet.
That I did not have information on, but I did know that he was a horny.
There's a couple other conspiracies.
But nobody's perfect. And I look at Trump himself, but nobody's perfect out there. Jan was good at what he did. Apparently, that's why he was the president. And it's a real shame that people just concentrate on this one bad thing about him. I'm sure he's going to do his penance for that. And
same thing with with us. Who's the guy that had the PES wiki there? Stanton
Friedman?
Not Stanton Friedman. Sterling Allen. So Sterling Allen, I met him at Tesla Tech in 2009 actually, and had a good conversation with him. But it turned out that they tried linking him to like a bigger conspiracy, like a whole network of pedophiles, and now that they put the pedophiles in to cover up the stuff. But I never saw like strong evidence for that, so I don't believe that one, because I haven't seen like really the strong evidence for that.
I mean, really, my concern with Jan was, why MUFON seemed to be covering it up, and it came down to a bunch of egos. The old timers at the at MUFON were, not interested in change. We've seen that with other, scientists that they're set in their ways. They have an effect named after them already, and they're just not interested in hearing anything new. I'm totally not like that. I just want the truth. We want the truth. We don't care about naming it after ourselves. All we want is the flying saucer. We want the actual
Right.
craft.
I do want the history though. I want this is historical. This is an important history. This all happened. We were all you guys are all like participants in history, and I just want it to like people to know like a little bit of inside scoop on because there's behind the scenes stuff in history all the time that dies with people and doesn't get told, and that happens all the time. And it's really a shame that more people don't like tell their stories. And I think a part of that is the fear that nobody's going to believe them because everyone already believes the official narrative, the narrative that's been around for years, and no one really cares about these little, inside tweaks to history when you start learning about it. Like, and I don't know. It's science is about history too, and the scientific history of this is I feel is very
It's happening.
important
It's
in
happening
human
right
thought.
here. It's literally happening. Scientific history is happening right here in the lab at
It's
Estes
crazy to think
Park.
about, but even if nothing happens of this, it's still history. It's still going to be history because it's going to be like, yeah, they tried a whole bunch. Remember back in 2020 when those guys formed that lab and they tried a whole bunch of experiments? Yeah, that didn't work, or whatever's going to be the case, whatever's going to come of it. It's still important that we explore this and the part that gets me is that when you start talking about this stuff, how taboo it is and how many, like, how this should be a conversation that everyone's having. And this is what TTSA advertised when they first came out and they showed us that craft and they said they're going to have a science division. And then their science division basically gave all their materials to the U.S. Army. It was like, what was the point of this? What was the point of this whole ordeal when you're not going to do nothing with the science division? You're not going to do nothing with the materials. And they,
All the donations just went to administrative overhead, which
and then
honestly we have absolutely no administrative overhead because we're all working.
we have hardly any audience either. We have 150 people watching this live, like guys like Dolan who were just talking about the Wilson documents about a conversation that supposedly happened between Eric Davis in a park garage out behind the EG&G at Area 51. That there's like it's all hearsay. There's no like strong evidence, and that stuff gets like there's 1,000 people watching that live compared to our live stream, which is talking about like real scientists, real cover-ups in action, and you see what happens with this kind of information, the way that it's treated. It's not given. It's suppressed.
It's very much suppressed.
It's
and
shadowed.
you guys can do something about it. The 150 people here that are watching, if you all share, like, and subscribe this video, we can fight against the algorithms that are keeping us down. And
I want to fight against all the scientists that think this is fake or that we're putting on a show.
It's not
here,
about.
like,
It's not really about fighting with them. These people are very intelligent people. We just need to show them that there's a new way.
Definitely, they're just
Egomaniacs
like,
to the extreme. I've seen that countless times. Even at Estes Park. I'm not going to point any names, but there has been egos that have been getting involved.
Yeah.
And it bothers me a lot because destruction of my ego is something that's very important to me. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect, and Jeremiah is working on that.
We try to destroy Mark's ego quite a bit, as you know. Too,
Yeah,
so.
completely.
He
okay
likes
with
to
that.
get this. I like to. He blows the balloon up, and I just pick it with the pin.
Yeah, and then I just blow it up again, and his hole suddenly disappeared because another thing that Jeremy keeps getting me on is like. Is that I get so enamored and excited for every experiment. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be the one. This is we've talked about it before about pulse, gravity's problem.
This guy just asked, is the military aware? They created a space force. All right.
Are they aware of us? Oh yeah.
I don't know if they're aware of us.
They are aware of us. They're I've gotten many suspicious emails. I've gotten people that have. I had PhD professors that finished their doctorate before I was born that are contacting me for advice. Like that's insane. Yeah, they're definitely aware of us, and if they're not, they do not deserve to be the CIA. They do not deserve to be the.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if they weren't people that know about us.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if we haven't met some of them. I actually had one guy who came down here.
That's
talking
fine.
To
They
me
need
about
to be a part of this. It should have came out years ago.
But I think it needs to come out independently. I think one of the this is just a theory, and we'll see how history plays out. But I've been right with many of my theories before.
History's written by the winners. Remember that.
That's right. That's right. But my theory is
History's written by the billionaires who control the like the Rockefeller
His
Foundation.
story. History is his story. It's just the story that's told
set up
after
the
the
academic
fact.
institutions which write the textbooks which are taught to all your children in public schools. And, so think about that. History is not the way. I wouldn't be surprised if we get erased from history, and that NASA comes out with this disclosure in a month, and then that gets the headlines, and we become a footnote. And then it takes researchers 20 to 30 years after the fact to dig this up. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens.
I really don't care which way it goes, so long as I'm on the team that's
Just
actually
letting you
building.
know.
So long as I'm on the team that's actually building flying saucer, on some team that's actually working on it, that's really where it's at. That's what we want.
The only reason I'm doing this is because I saw TTSA pretending to do this, and I wanted to show people how it was really done. All right, and if someone, and that's my goal, is to motivate the other people out there that are watching us and being like, these guys are a bunch of idiots. Let me show them how it's really done. Because if I wait you out there watching this right now, and I've done my job.
Exactly. And Jeremy has been really key in getting people together since he's been at it for so long and talking to so many people and investing.
I
in
got the
every single
Podklanov
thing.
Interview released.
He got the Podklanov
the only
video
interview
release.
with Eugene Podklanov.
You flew with me
there's
out to
different things. I've met a lot of people in this.
He flew with me out to LA and we did the Alien Con thing. He put me in contact with Jeremiah. Talked to Seattle. I found him on Twitter. But like all these people are all coming together because
yes. The important thing is unity and entanglement and this brotherhood and this alliance and the accepting of the scientific community.
And I'm totally okay with
amazing.
girls getting involved as well, so long as they're sane and want to see this. I don't think girls
I have
are.
plenty of female researchers already on my team that have helped me with a lot of different research and information.
That's really amazing.
They stay on my team based on how much they contribute, and the people that brag and say that they're going to do this and that the disclosure's coming and that they're the Messiah and stuff. Those are the kind of people I've stayed away from because my experiences. That's the other reason. So I'm sorry about that.
We'll agree to disagree on that. I still think they have something to show, and
I hope so.
I'm very excited for their paper, and
because you meet people like that, they're very often are like that, and it's like Jack Sarfati. He's so full of himself. He knows like the CIA hired him in the '70s to like look into a lot of this stuff, and he wrote papers on it, and yeah, he knows that he's.
How many people read those papers, and how many people did anything with?
How
those
many
papers?
people understood?
How many other people understood those papers too? Like we're trying to put it in the most simple, terms, and
this is not easy stuff.
That's
my goal.
It should be easy. It should be pretty simple. We should be able to explain exactly what's going on. I think we should turn this camera around, show them what's going on the other side over here. The shop is a bit of a mess because we are currently working on stuff.
Yeah, let's go. Let's just keep changing our scenery, man. We're almost an hour and 45 minutes into this. This is cool, man. This is.
You got to lock it over.
You've retained 135 people.
We got 100. This is the most I've ever had on a live stream viewing before. This is
Okay, so
amazing, guys.
this
Thank
is
you
like
all.
the control.
Smash that like button, guys. Thank you for helping out and share this on social media.
This is like the control room for the Faraday cage. The Faraday cage is on the other side of this wall. Over here, this stuff is not set up at all. We just have it all haphazard because we're concentrating on alpha, which is what we're doing right now. But this is the 125,000 volt power supply, the 100,000 volt voltage divider, so we can watch the voltage changes live. Yeah, of course, you got to have one of those. Ooh,
Geiger counter.
Geiger counter. Where'd you find that?
I found it next to your multiphotonic duplicator.
Oh, we've been looking for that for a while. Okay, pretty cool. Over here we have, let me see if you can see it. Yeah, right over here.
You got a vacuum chamber too?
Yeah, we got a vacuum chamber straight off of Amazon. It was $100. Stainless steel. It has a nice acrylic top. This is our vacuum pump. We've been using that for the samples to degauss them.
Can you pressure cook in that? Like, the stuff you get cold and you suck it all out?
You can see what happens to marshmallows. I put them in there. It's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, it'll make a mess too. So.
Another thing we showed from the lab. This is the gravitator experiment we tried. It's basically just a massive capacitor plate with glass in between. Thing's pretty hefty. We checked it for weight loss. in the vertical orientation and the horizontal orientation for movement. We incorporated what do you call it? Incense sticks for smoke, verification to make sure that there's no movement of the air or ionic wind. And as soon as we covered every high voltage cable with enough dielectric to stop that, there was no more effect. It's very possible Thomas Townsend Brown was just seeing the local ionization of the air around it. So that's why there was an initial pulse as the air ionized, and then it slowly came back to center. To do these experiments properly is something we haven't tried yet. Is just do it outside, and you got to pick a night where there's no wind.
Build a craft out of it, fly me around it.
You do that too, but another thing I want to do is charge this capacitor up in nanoseconds. If we can charge it up extremely quickly, maybe there'll be some other effect.
So getting that super high rise time on your signal generator.
Super high rise time on
that super sharp sawtooth wave.
To do that, we're going to be using this guy over here, which is a Thyrotron. This was actually a component in the Berkeley Labs linear accelerator. And funnily enough, I was showing this to David Alzafon when we were on chat with him. Turns out his dad actually worked with this very piece of equipment when he was in Berkeley Labs. So that's like a piece of history right here. It's capable of, I think, 250 megawatts pulses, like crazy amount of energy. And so long as you have a capacitor to supply it to charge up the other capacitor, we should get extremely high switching times. This actually helped discover two elements, berkelium and californium, or Berkeley, California, which is the where the lab was located. And this is a piece of history that may be history again. There's some papers written on it.
They're interested in learning more about that. So Hover Brothers, man, that is still part of a theory team that they're working on, right? So people are familiar with Hover Brothers, right? I teamed up with that physicist from Princeton, Ken Griggs, in 2017, and he released a hypergraph model of physics, which was predated Wolfram's physics hypergraph theory by 3 years. Wolfram, of course, released his hypergraph physics project in January, shortly after the lockdown from COVID-19. So it's pretty cool that I was connected with Ken, and that we came out with that Phoenix theory and that hypergraph theory of physics 3 years before Wolfram came out with that same theory based on computational irreducibility, that there's no simpler way to do the mathematics, that this is a fundamental, this geometric unity, a more fundamental way of doing mathematics and computation and doing physics through math and computation, and then essentially unifying the three of those. And then once we unify the three of those, all physics can explain, basically you get physics. In quantum physics, you get the periodic table, you have chemistry, and then you have biology, and then you have everything else. So it's really key and core to the understanding of everything, I believe, and that theory of Phoenix, which is the physics of entanglement networks and information exchanges, was very similar to, I think it was more developed than Wolfram's theory, and that Wolfram is in fact going off in some wrong directions and is a little bit misguided in some of his. You can see that he's been a little bit lost in some of his latest live streams, and the audience and viewership has gradually died off for his project. But Ken is working with a team of programmers and scientists, also members of my team and other PhDs and other scientists that I've met over the years, a select few of us, and I'm still communicating with Ken, and I'm not a direct part of his team right now, but he's definitely keeping me on standby for the media matters when he's published part 2 and 3 of his Phoenix theory papers. Of course, we published part 1 when we released some minor details about the theory back in 2017. That video has gotten over 600,000 views now on YouTube. It's actually my top video on my channel. It's most viewed, and I haven't taken it down, even though it attracts so much negative attention because of the fact that we asked for money and tried to set up a funding mechanism, a crowdsource funding mechanism at the end of the movie, which made a lot of people discredit all the theory and all the information in it, by thinking that it was a scam or a way to make money to
I
scam
mean, if you
people
want
for
to look
money
at a
for hoverboards.
scam, yeah, if you want to look at a scam, look no farther than TTSA. They're straight up a scam. I heard
50
recently-
million in debt.
50 million in debt, and Tom DeLonge's trying to start a religion out of it. Like,
Yeah, if you want to scam, look at the CIA run PSYOP that's basically in all the headlines, has a TV channel on the History Channel right now called Unidentified that has gotten terrible ratings and a lot of it might not have a season 3 if it weren't funded by the Pentagon itself. And just people are waking up, and they're sick of the lies, and we have the internet now. It's something that the intelligence agencies and who have kept these secrets hidden for the past 70 plus years have never counted on before. The fact, the ability of humans to get information and connect dots is unsurpassed like ever before, and it's you can get some people to get turned off and not look deeper, right? But for those that person that sees something real and is like, holy crap, and they start digging deeper, they eventually realize that there is substance here, that we're not just putting on a lab coat and like, I'm giving people papers and linking them with scientists, and we're linking up a network of people. So Hover Brothers was not a complete failure. What happened with Ken, kind of like the misunderstanding and some of the accusations that went back and forth with us, because I was unsure of his theory. I was like, what? He accused me of working with the Russians and being a Russian, working with a Russian spy.
You just take some like Russian. You got a Russian grant or something, or
I had gotten some money, which he predated the NDA and the contract that we had for Hover Brothers by 6 months. So he started going after my financial records from 6 months before because he had predated the contract for whatever reason, and then found out that I had gotten $2,000 prize money from a conference by this good Russian guy. And he said that was going to look like he just couldn't handle, like, he had to sever all ties with me because of that, because he didn't want, like, he was too scared. That was right after the Russiagate thing and a lot of the Russian stuff in the Trump administration at the time in 2017.
I will tell you there is a little bit of truth to that allegation. Not pertaining to you particularly. I don't know all the details in that, but the Russian and the Chinese are very interested in what we're doing over here, and there has been some espionage. There has been some like spoofed emails that I've received. I'm not going to get into that right now. We'll get into that in the book later. We actually have a writer. We actually have a PhD writer who's planning on putting a book together for this. But I was trying to fill her in on all the details of it, and I was just trying to explain to her this is an ongoing story. The story is not even over yet.
No, not by a long shot. So Hover Brothers right now, Ken, I've linked him up with a couple programmers. If anyone's a programmer interested in, it was really good at building software. Ken has a Phoenix program that he's already had built that was designed for him by another programmer about 10 years ago. But it's 10 or 15 years ago, but it's an antiquated version of the program, and it needs updating, and it needs more expandability. He would require you to sign an NDA and then work on board the project. And if you're interested, you can contact him through his email or his YouTube channel, or if you can't get a hold of that information, you can always contact me on Twitter or Facebook or my email, thealienscientist@gmail.com, and I'll get you in touch with the right people. But
getting to NDAs is something interesting. When I had a chance to talk to Richard, he took me to the airport in Huntsville when we were visiting them one time, and had a long conversation with him about how I felt about NDAs. And
you should always have a time limit on the NDA.
I understand, first of all, that there are certain proprietary things. IP is an important part of this, but fundamentals in physics are not IP. Okay, and if they want, I told them if they wanted me to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
I really think that a lot of the fundamental physics has been hidden because of the applications, like
yes,
things,
but it's not. It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. We shouldn't be teaching bad physics in universities just to hide classified information. That's the problem,
And if you talk to like different scientists from different fields, you'll find that what one person calls a magnetic moment is something else to somebody else. And if you talk about the electron, or you could have a hole if you're an electrical engineer, which is the opposite of the electron, which is the math is all backwards, but it equals the same thing. And what that does It just doesn't
The
allow.
electrons are negative, and then the current flows in the opposite direction.
Yeah, so you want the
Doesn't-
positive to react, which
Yeah,
is just a hole of where the electron isn't. So when you have these two, when you have these two different, groups of scientists that can't talk to each other because the same words mean different things, it gets very confusing. It's literally become the Tower of Babel, where everyone is talking a totally different language. Whether you're
Well, they
reading
changed the
biology-
terminology on stuff too. As you learn, when you start researching classified programs on promising technologies that looked like they were going somewhere, and then suddenly all the funding was cut, and then you don't find anything about that term in the literature anymore. And then like the flying magnetic donut pulses, and then like it disappears in the literature, and then you start looking around, and you find stuff on spatiotemporal vortices, which is a different way of saying the same exact thing, but they just changed the terminology to obscure it and make it harder for people to find.
and make it harder for people to understand as well. Like,
Yeah, and
the
also
purpose of the database, after all.
now is the purpose of the database project, which is part of the Hubbard Brothers initiative that we've set up for disclosure.
Well, okay, remember, you can't say that the database project is part of the Hubbard Brothers initiative because Sean was working on
No,
that
it wasn't. Sean was working on that.
simultaneously, and I was working on it simultaneously, all of us independently with our own databases, thinking that we had to save this stuff because we watched
Right.
it systematically trickle away from the internet.
Right, and that's what I did is I
I
found all the database people and we shared and we all got together and pooled it and created a mother load.
about it and decided that it'd be best to compile our efforts, and now it's how many? It's got to be over a terabyte now.
A terabyte.
Close, not over a terabyte, but it's got to be approaching.
That's
probably a
insane.
terabyte at the end of it.
It was, I had 28, I had 30, no, I had 50 something, maybe 50 gigs, 28 gigs of actually, once I condensed it all down and removed all the fluff, I had
That's
like
still gotta be
28
turned. I got
gigs
plenty of
when I
space.
started. And
Yeah.
we're at a terabyte. That's amazing.
Space it up, folks. Space. Don't worry.
This is cool, man. So that's a big part of this is all part of disclosure. I would say it's part of Hubbard Brothers. The Hubbard Brothers vision that I had was just bringing about disclosure through discovery. That disclosure is not going to happen. The government's not going to come out and say here's some file on all this stuff. It's like basically this is for humans to discover on our own. And even if it were ETs that got information that they put up and as a Men in Black, it's for the reason that we need to make this need to make this step on our own and have this discovery kind of process happen.
Yeah,
It
man.
can't just be given to us.
It needs to be done independently, and it needs to be done as a combined effort because it's going to take both of those things
It's
to
going to
happen
take an
if we want it to be
international
free.
effort, I think, really.
Well, international
what this
efforts
needs
would
to
help with
snowball
that.
into is like basically a new Manhattan Project level
worldwide.
initiative.
Yeah, and it can't be just stuck in
Like
in
Commander
America.
Fravor was talking about, and Lex, sorry to interrupt and cut you off, but Lex Friedman had Commander Fravor on. He was talking about, well, how do I bring this up to Elon? And like, he was talking about all the billionaires that exist in the world, the amount of money that's out there. We have everything we need to do this. We just got to it's got to be a change of ideas first that needs to happen. It's a change that has to happen in the mindset first. And I don't know how we're going to do that with the amount of the suppression and the stigmas and the division.
I think the way we're going to do that is by showing positive results and just publishing them in as many channels as possible. The papers and theories can come out later, and I'm fine with that. But as long as we get the experimental data out and we can show the experimental setup as it's running and show them that we're the real deal over here, then I think the money will start flowing. I've already spoken to quite a few people who have offered, to get involved, but they all want to see, positive results, and that's pretty much been David Alzafon's, experience running around Silicon Valley trying to fund his father's experiment for a rerun. That when people get very excited about it at first, but then they go talk to a, GR general relativity, scientist, and he's like, oh, that's impossible. Don't even bother with that. So if you have such a negative mindset that it's not possible, you're never going to try it, and it will become impossible. Because what you think about
the theory of the time, like Lord Kelvin, the theoretical, the Einstein or the Caltech, super genius of the time, said that heavier than air flying machines were impossible. So
who was that guy who said that there's nothing new to science? It was in the 1800s or something.
it was the head of the patent office. We wanted to close the patent office in like 1920 because he said everything that was going to be invented had already been invented, and there would be nothing new.
Wow. and look where we are today. Getting on
Another
to
thing I
what,
want to point out too is that in 100 years we went from driving horses and buggies to having this kind of technology with the cell phone, this broadcasting ability, and people think that alien technology is 1,000 or 1,000,000 years more advanced.
no, it isn't actually. The cell phone that we're talking on right now, and the GPS systems that we use in our cars are actually more advanced technologically and from an engineering standpoint than the cell phone that we're actually, than the anti-gravity stuff that we're working on. This equipment is
Not the
actually pretty
materials,
old.
man. We need I think that we're going to need material science, and that's going to be the real thing. And that's why I think
Material science is
I've
going to be
pointed out
important
that-
for like the Rolls-Royce version, but you can do this on a real shoestring budget on
Wow.
really simple materials, I
we'll
believe.
see. But left-handed metamaterials seem to be nonlinear optical materials, certainly candidates for this kind of stuff. But what I want to point out is that China has such an unfair advantage in terms of their semiconductors and their material science and their manufacturing capabilities, just because so much of the electronics has been built over in China for so long.
It was a massive mistake allowing that all to go over there. One other thing I want to talk on that Jeremiah just brought up is the independent verification, and it needs to come out independently. I have this theory that there's actually an alien treaty with a couple extraterrestrial races, and they basically said,
Come on.
well, hear me out. Anti-gravity.
I'm gonna go get a beer for this one.
Well, one second. Anti-gravity needs
No,
to.
he might need to be for this one. I'll bring you
Anti-gravity.
here, Jeremy.
Do we have any? I don't think
We have ciders, I think. Let me
cider.
get you something to drink with alcohol in it to calm your. Go ahead. Mark.
Anti-gravity, I believe, needs to come out independently based on some extraterrestrial treaty. It is reasonable, it's rational to think that they would put such a clause in there because they don't want people who've been working on this for 20 years in the secret space program suddenly making a big buck off of it and causing a lot of social imbalance. So it's really people like us that have, self-motivated and just believing that it's possible and pushing forward and persevering that that will have to spearhead this effort. Many people have called me crazy, delusional, and all that stuff, but I think ultimately we'll prove them all wrong and bring about real anti-gravity disclosure through technology, which was the goal all along. Cheers.
Cheers.
Any questions you have? You were looking.
Yeah. Okay. So if you guys want to see what's going on in the chat, I was waiting for questions that were relevant to what we were doing, and not a whole lot of those had been asked, except for, of course, the predominant and most important one, which is where are the results? And the results that we had previously, we're not even going to waste time trying to publish or put together a paper on, because in my opinion, which is why I came down here the first time and why I'm back again, those results had a noise score that was so incredibly high they were not worth spending the time on to report. So at this point, like we said, we finally have a setup that has a good hysteresis. It's returning to zero, it's doing what it's supposed to do within a margin that we can accept for the tolerances of our test. And within the claims of Elzaphan and what it's supposed to do in terms of its weight loss by percentage will be way, way above the degrees of error that we would need to be concerned with if the test does in fact produce results. And so, like we said, we haven't done that yet because we just set up the new setup as Estes Spark was going on. We were out here during little breaks or during talks that didn't particularly pertain to the research that we were doing, and basically setting this up so that we could try to do this tonight in the same vein and time date of Estes Spark.
There was actually one talk on how AI could help us discover anti-gravity, and that was straight to the machine shop. We recorded it, but straight to the machine shop for that one because it's completely irrelevant to what we're doing.
Yeah.
Basically, what he's saying is it was way beyond anything that we can actually personally work with. We love the idea of allowing a computer to analyze our results. Yeah, because
before we go and try and get materials and start doing some really crazy experiments that require some really expensive lab equipment and stuff that we might need help from other universities or institutes to actually do. This is going to get their attention. This is going to build the team. It's going to build the public interest in this, which needs to happen. And more people who have discoveries and information need to get brave about coming forward with the information and publishing, and be less I don't know. That's really the wall. I think the secrecy that needs to be broken through, because as I pointed out before, so much of the institutional funding for this kind of stuff gets clouded and cut because it threatens existing industries. And anytime you're dealing with this military-industrial complex, if you start threatening to put all the jets and McDonnell Douglas and Lockheed Martin's main, money-making thing, something else, then it kind of causes waves. And people are resistant to change, as we've seen. The Forbes had this whole article about, how's the economy going to react to quantum computing, once this, comes out and stuff. And basically what they're doing is putting out the feelers because they have quantum computers. The military and the NSA have already built the quantum computers. They've been after this. They've been throwing all kinds of money at it because for the encryption, that's a key thing for the ability of quantum computers to break encryption is just beyond anything that the NSA has, and that's they've thrown tons of money at it for years. And I think that they have one, and now they're gauging about whether to release it to the public and how. And that's where you see articles like that coming out. And it's only a matter of time before stuff like this, they're going to gauge. Because I think this stuff's so classified that even the top generals don't, I think a lot of them don't even know about it, have all the pieces. And then when
Need to know.
it's a need to know kind of thing. So when they start,
Unacknowledged.
yeah, it's unacknowledged. So now it's starting to leak out. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting next couple of months as this gets more and more attention and more people get access to this information and start taking it seriously and it actually spreads. The problem is so many people look at it and they're just like, these guys, this is craziness and this is insanity and there's nothing real here or something.
I think the 150 people that are watching this over here definitely agree that we're onto something. That's why they're spending their evenings watching our live stream, and we appreciate everyone that's watching right now.
Yeah,
If
it's
you can
great.
donate to any of the funds that relate to the research, we definitely appreciate that.
And if you can't donate, just share the video everywhere you can and get people talking about it. And try to ask people anytime a scientist speaks or like Neil deGrasse Tyson speaks, or start confronting these people with this stuff.
I do
wanna
have
get
an
on live
interesting
stream.
comment here, real quick, from all the commenters. I'm not gonna say who.
We gotta get.
Anyways,
on.
what's one of the most interesting or surprising fun results that we got? Which, in terms of the Elzaphon stuff, that I can't speak on. In terms of weird experiments that we've done with high power impulse, those are definitely some of the most fun results, at least that I've personally seen and that I've had other people witness. We have this device called an impulse generator, which has a huge bank of electrolytic capacitors. They are extremely low ESR, elevator motor start capacitors. They're designed for high impulse starting currents and repeated pulse currents. So they're pretty decent, and that makes them a little bit larger than other capacitors of a similar amount of energy storage. Anyways, we have a bank of 48 of these things wired up in a series parallel configuration, and the total amount of current that we measured on that system during impulse was about 1.5 million amps. So we could put various things between the electrodes and slam that current through them. And one of the things that we did was we used a piece of copper wire just between the electrodes, and we had been testing various gauges to see how thick we needed to make the conductors and what kind of fusing issues we were going to have with the switch, because we had a major plasma deformation of the surface contact. We used a steel one and an aluminum one so that when they would explosively contact with each other and form a gas vapor, they wouldn't fuse, because it's kind of hard to get those materials to knock together and stick to each other well.
Any welder knows that. Yeah.
Right. So it was a good choice of materials, I think, and what we ended up doing was putting a piece of copper wire in there. In this case, it was a 12 gauge that did the magic trick. And we would blow up most of that wire. It would vaporize under the 1.5 mega amps, and most of it would turn into plasma vapor. But there were pieces that would be left over with their ends burned off and the insulation burned off, and those pieces of wire would find their ways into strange things. So we have a 2x4 and a 2x4 next to each other. So yeah, two 2x4s next to each other, sandwiched, and then we have a door that rests up against the faceplate of one of those 2x4s, and then we have another piece of plywood that comes along the side and blocks that plate. So what happened is a piece of wire that had been excited in this system blew out of the piece of single conductor, snaked its way around the two 2x4s, past both of them against the faceplate, and then over a corner. And when it did this, it didn't leave anything but a little compression mark in the wood. So this wire basically took two 90-degree turns and made its way almost all the way out this door without blowing it open, almost as if it was a liquid flowing through with a huge amount of forward momentum. It didn't punch its way through, it just simply kind of left a path like a worm going along the surface or something, or like a snake
Like a
crawling on the sand.
Wormhole. Was
so
it
it's one of those
the
weird
quantum tunnel through the friggin' door.
It's one of those weird things where the liquid seems to have acted, or the metal seems to have acted almost like a liquid or a gel. And it's not the first time that we've seen that kind of thing, but the only time that we see strange and anomalous results like that is when we're testing very, very high energy levels. That either means high discharge voltages or high discharge currents, or both. And
There's so much we
how do
have
you
yet
check
to
for that?
understand.
How do you develop a theory on exactly why that's happening? So of course that's naturally the problem is we see it happen, we can create conditions in which it's extremely likely to happen and repeat it, not on a consistent basis because we still don't understand exactly what the phenomenon is. But in terms of writing any kind of mathematical representation of why, it's not consistent enough to try to observe these results in a more scientific and scrutinous way. So it's something that we note down, we remember and talk about over some drinks, but it's not something that we publish. It's just, it motivates us to keep on looking because we see strange things like this happen all the time.
Yeah.
And they pique the curiosity of the interested
You're
mind.
gonna write a paper on it, but it's
Right.
like one of those things that's like, holy crap, that happened. And I wonder how much stuff like that happened in other labs that just didn't go reported, and just kind of like gets swept under the rug.
Kinetic, the
Phenomenal.
conductor was copper that we were testing in that case. We just wanted to see what the fusing current was going to be over the 4.2 nanoseconds that the pulse duration lasts for that capacitor bank.
Have you tried the capacitor bank charging another capacitor, like power liquid capacitor, similar to
It only fires at 1600 volts thereabouts.
1600 volts. Okay, that's
So it's a lower voltage system. It's not, say, like a coin shrinking system where you have just ridiculously high impulse currents.
How about those,
Yeah, you do have impulse capacitors specifically for that type of pulse discharge circuit where you could get away with it and the cats would be fine. These were not designed for that. They're still low ESR, but they're not as fast as those polypropylenes.
So we should cut up some key highlights in the conference, the stuff you reported from that Estes Park conference.
Yeah, everything with
including-
permissions, of course.
Yeah,
I would definitely go
permissions
through
from all
Hal
sides,
and make sure because we
get
want to
Hal's-
respect the conference and respect the
Oh
privacy.
yeah, dude,
Absolutely.
these people gave us a window inside something, real. It's an invite only. It was a good window inside that world just to see it in action, and man, not a lot of people get to see that side of that stuff.
Yeah, Estes Park was wild. I mean, the whole Woodward and Hal working hard to put that thing together.
This is not Hal Putoff. This is Hal Fern, who's a
Yeah.
Hal
Very
Fern.
important differentiation that we
Yeah,
should make.
and he's a physics professor at I think Caltech, and he was doing this out of his office. Actually, they really enjoyed the whole Zoom presentation setup, and plan on the future conferences to have the Zoom components as well.
Yeah,
because
so
of
they
how,
can have
how successful it was, because everyone's just more comfortable staying at home, and people like us. I was actually planning on flying out there, had everything booked, but as soon as they canceled all in-person stuff, we had to join the Zoom, and that actually
was
worked
key
out
because I
pretty
got
well.
to come down and I got to kind of jump in for a second there, although I didn't get to speak or say anything because we kind of got blocked before that was able to happen. That kind of like threw me off because I was afraid to ask questions or do anything because I didn't want to get. I was afraid of causing too much of a stink after that because I was like, oh my god, we're gonna get kicked out of this very special conference that we got invited to, and I don't want to I don't want to get kicked out.
Yeah, with the controversy that happened earlier, I mean, we're really basically treading on thin ice in terms of that conference. Because the truth is that conference doesn't care about any of that stuff that happened between, they don't care. That's not what
They just want to keep it
Right.
out of the door. They don't want allegations like that floating around. They just want to keep it clean, scientific and as rigorous as possible. They try to keep scientific kooks out of it.
They've been very good at that.
They've been very good at that. There are many science kooks, science fiction people who think up all these weird theories that are not based in anything, and try to get in on these conferences. And luckily, we haven't seen much of that. There was one impromptu speech that was at the end of yesterday.
We had a meeting like that, even at the Cold Fusion Symposium in 2011 at MIT. Right at the last day, there was some psychic woman that jumped into the conference and gave this whole speech, and everyone was joking around that she was going home to going home with Mitchell Schwartz that night, who put on the conference for that thing. He's like, yeah, this is his girlfriend. Just like shut up and let her do her thing. You know, even though everyone's like rolling their eyes and she's like talking about all this psychic phenomenon and like cold fusion and
So there was
nothing to do with cold fusion. It was like.
Yeah, there was actually a guy, I forgot, I think his name's Mark, also, that got on at the end, and he started showing all the different theories that are coming out of science fiction. And he didn't really have any concrete theories, but he was trying to like just provoke different thoughts and different approaches to why anti-gravity, would work this way or that way, or just opening up new thoughts for us. And I found that presentation to be very much more in depth than I expected him to go. He started getting into math. It was very well put together. He whoever that guy was, he put a lot of work into it. I really appreciate that conference, that speech, and I'd like to talk to him again in the future.
I'm so glad. I'm so disappointed that I missed yesterday.
Oh,
Yesterday,
yeah, that's all.
Oh man, yeah, yesterday was.
Yesterday
It would have been better for me to come down yesterday and skip
Mind-blowing.
today. I mean, and not, I don't know.
we're all sleeping here in the lab, actually.
Speaking of which, I gotta break down all that shit because I gotta go home.
Yeah, we're sleeping here in the lab. We're actually working, as many hours as we can stick in the day or the night. Last night, me and Jeremiah, we went to bed. What, it was like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
It was probably closer to about 4:30, I think.
Yeah, so
Wow.
we're working on like 3 hours of sleep from last night, and we're just continuously at it, nonstop, trying to make this anti-gravity stuff happen as
Hey, I built
quickly
your
as
rest of
possible.
your Faraday cage out for you.
You
Use my-
popped
my
that
skills.
out. That was amazing.
Yeah, dude, you definitely have the craftsmanship when it comes down to working with that sheet metal. I didn't realize you could process the stuff in the ways that you were doing. So
You
it was
did it so quickly. It
pretty
really,
impressive craftsmanship.
Yeah,
it really looks really nice. And when this
Thanks.
experiment works, we'll set it up inside the Faraday
Glad I
cage.
can lend my skills. 'Cause,
We'll capture it from as many angles as we possibly can. And
I can't believe like the amazing stuff that the three of us have put together, and like I know there's more people out there that like there's all these people that are bragging like how much they're gonna come and join the team. The people that are real serious that like are bragging, that aren't just blowing smoke. The ones that are real serious, they're going to if you build it, they will come, Mark.
also in
This
the
is the field of
future,
dreams, bro.
yes. Also in the future, I think for future streams, well, this is cool that we're on the cell phone and we have it all set up right here, remote in the lab.
Yeah.
Without the computers and everything. I hope the audio is okay because people complained about it in the past. But I think we should work on Zoom or a program like that where you can show several screens and people can share their screens with
Yeah,
you.
we need to do
We
that.
could have a lot of phone calls coming in at once, and we could have all different people talking. And
Video
I could also
conference.
show like just the laptop over here that has the scale measurement. That could be one of the windows, and we could have cameras that are angled all over the experiments. Everyone can see exactly what's going on as it happens live. And I think that's really the best way you convince people that this is real and that they should try it themselves. And
we should invite them to come down to the lab and show them.
they're invited.
I want to get
Email me falconspaceprogram@gmail. And if you're serious about this, we'll come down to the lab. You'll see what's up at the time, and be glad to give you a tour of it.
I want to get
this
things
is
set up
open
on the
source.
shelf so that we can get any one of these experiments up and running within an hour just to demonstrate. Like that would be
It's pretty
cool.
hard to do that, but
I know it's really hard. It would be awesome if we get like a whole bunch of demonstrations up and then show them all at once, like in a live stream, like one after the other. But it's too hard to do.
So ideally, as we're going through and we're testing everything that doesn't work and then doesn't work again, if we do find something that actually does work, you can bet that thing is going to have a special little place where it can be set up and demonstrated so that we can show that.
flick of a switch, sort
I
of.
mean, the truth is that we tried so many things that just don't work, and
Right.
there are a great many theories and claims. Even Brown, with the DC, it doesn't work with DC. It really doesn't. We've tested it with DC in 8 different configurations, and
Right.
it doesn't work with DC in the ways that are
And
explained.
I swear that there's a whole bunch of these people like saying that it works, and then they start these conspiracy theories just to get people to waste their time on stuff that doesn't work. And it costs so much money. There's a barrier to entry, and then there's the time that you waste and the money that you spend, and then you discredit yourself because you're doing experiments and stuff that doesn't work. And it's like it's crazy, like this field. it's crazy the experience that I've had in trying to do research in this field and get to real information. And how long it's taken me.
I have a very brute force approach, as Mark has mentioned before in some of the live broadcasts. I do have a brute force approach to trying to test these theories out. I have an engineering background and I have some physics background, but my physics is limited, and it's limited in probably one of the most important ways to a lot of the researchers that were at Estes Park, which is the mathematics side. I see a lot of the same symbols being used in a variety of different mathematical systems, each with their own different meaning in the particular context of that system. And because a lot of this research is a multiple disciplinary action, you have to use the same symbol and have it mean different things in different equations, which tends to get really, really, really confusing for a visual thinker like me. So I haven't had the conventional training, and it's something that, as Woodward pointed out today, and he totally called me out on it. I don't agree with everything that he said, but I agree with him on this, and he gave me some sage advice, which is, if you don't know the physics yet, you better get to it right away, because it's going to be necessary once you find something to actually explain what you found. Now,
to keep things. They use Greek symbols because there's more letters in the Greek alphabet, and they needed so many different letters. They need more symbols and letters to stand for things that they wouldn't get confused. But yes, there is quite a bit of overlap. If you look up, I have some physics books that have like a whole index that show you all the physics symbols and what their common conventions are, and there is a lot of confusion and overlap with things like for example, the normal mu could be the permeability of free space, or it could be the normal force coefficient, and it's also a couple other things in other equations as well, like a muon, or it can be so there's other types.
Mu is like the permeability, permittivity space.
Permeability.
Mu and epsilon, right?
Epsilon's the permittivity, and that's the electrical component, and then mu is the.
And there's a lot of things about
component.
the curl and vector tenses that are not equated for, like just space-time curl alone, and taking a look at fifth-dimensional physics, for example, and how you have space compressed within space. It's one of those things that's oftentimes not considered. Space isn't linear as far as we've been able to prove. We haven't seen major examples of it in person as far as any probes go, but we see strange signatures from very, very distant sources, and some of those signatures have weird characteristics, redshifts that we don't account for, blue shifts that we don't account for.
Yeah.
And this dark matter that seems to be all pervasive, right? So the big question comes down to, what is it? It seems like every scientist and their son wants to answer exactly what that question is. What is dark matter? And all these various theories.
Well, Mike McCulloch.
So who do you believe? You know.
I like Mike McCulloch because I've always said, I don't know. I've always thought that dark matter was like the epicycles, and it was like a way to explain gaps in the theory. That's not. It's a way to explain away things in the theory. Like the whole thing with dark matter, they created they have this dark matter that they insert in this equation for galaxy rotation. It's one of the papers that started the whole dark matter debate, and the whole dark matter theory thing. But one reason that they need it is because there's this spiral rotation of galaxies which doesn't obey conventional things, and Mike McCulloch, he's been blowing up Twitter, and they had some interesting. He has some interesting things to say about that as well on Twitter. If you go and find those tweets for anyone that's interested, but Mike McCulloch has this whole theory of quantized inertia, which he says predicts galaxy rotations fundamentally from first principles without the need for this whole dark matter thing, which is kind of inserted artificially in the equations to account for this. It's sort of, he compares it to the epicycles of Galileo's time.
Well, the thing I keep on looking at, like my big interest in all of this, which is a little bit different than working on right now at the lab, is my interest is in the electromagnetics side of things, and is there actually a link within possibly scalar potentials between gravity and electromagnetism? And Woodward is very much, and he made it quite clear, against this idea that the vacuum of space can be a viable medium to push against, and you have to push against something else that's at a distance. But I consider the distant objects that are producing forces which we can't actually push against to be carried by the vacuum.
Did you guys see that other guy that was?
He was pushing against the gravity field. I mean, how does he prove that?
Well, again, I don't know, because the truth is that I don't have a working model and a theory to prove it. So he could very well be right. He could also possibly be wrong. He's in, I think, phase 2 overly. Yeah. So I understand the reason for why he needs to stand where he's standing on his position of it. But it's still gonna, we're still gonna look into this stuff because there, like I said, there are a lot of different theories, and everybody seems to want to explain these strange phenomena that we observe out in deep space. So I think there's a lot to look into there, and we're going to test these theories in the best ways that we can, especially the ones which have claimed experiments already.
And we're going to keep attention to the experiments that are going on, the things we can't test, because there's lots of other ideas there that other people are looking into that we can't really test. Like, for example, Daniel Kaplan, he's doing research into muonium, which is an antimatter form of muon. It's an anti-muons mixed with an electron, and it forms an atom called muonium. And he's using muonium in these experiments to see if antimatter falls up or down, because it's a question that's scientists still don't have answered. They don't really have a good understanding of what antimatter is and how it actually functions and behaves in the physical universe, because they have never isolated or created any of it to exist for long enough to do any kind of real experiments with it. So there's a lot of interesting research that's going on that I'm I try on the cutting edge of, and try to, if anyone's doing any other research on gravity that I don't know about or don't report on, then please bring it to my attention, because I'm always interested in what people are saying and what all the top physics are doing on the subject of gravity, and our efforts to understand that, from Kip Thorne, who studied under Wheeler, who built the LIGO gravity wave detectors, which are using squeezed light to increase the...
We actually had somebody from the LIGO experiment, one of the interns that was actually working on it, help build the Faraday cage.
Well, that's cool. That's the guy, right? Tom?
No, it wasn't Tom. It was another guy that I got in contact with. Back in the day, I was very naive, and I actually posted on LinkedIn for a warp drive technician. I was like, who's going to answer this job description? This guy from LIGO actually, sent me his resume. He told him, listen, we have no money to pay you, but you can come by and help out, and you'll be in the credits. And he showed up. He was very enamored by what we were doing, and it was exciting. And I came over just once or twice. He got a job since then that actually pays the bills, and maybe we'll pull him on. He was a hands-on engineer that actually worked on the LIGO experiment here in New Jersey. There's one in.
It's cool. It's cool.
He was working on the interferometer for the LIGO experiment here in New Jersey, and his physics professor actually won the Nobel Prize for it. So that was his work. Physics professor was just obviously telling him what to do.
Yeah.
But he was the engineer that actually put it together, and I think that's very cool, because it's all about the engineers. The engineers are the people who actually put this stuff.
We're the ones that are going to build it.
We're the ones that are going to build it. People who are theorizing, there's too many.
We can dream. Yeah, we can dream and we can come up with dreams, but the people that make dreams into reality are that's what I do all day for my job. I'm a contractor. I talk to people like, what is your dream bathroom? What's your dream kitchen? And they give me their dreams, and I build it for them. So,
what's your dream Faraday cage?
Yeah, what's your dream Faraday cage? So that one is it. That's a capacitor. It's two Faraday cages in one. It's one on the inside, one on the outside, and that's my dream. That we could do any kind of experiment we want in there. It'll be sheltered, and no one, it'll be safe. If we set that up and we close the door, I guarantee you my phone won't work out here. We'll shut the stream off. We'll be isolated. But anyways, this is I think it's kind of crazy when you work at this stuff and you think you're getting nowhere and people are ridiculing you, no one's paying attention, and then you get a guy from LIGO who contacts you, or and these people from NASA that come out of the blue, or Tony Robertson who emailed me yesterday.
They send cease and desist.
People from NASA that send you cease and desist orders based on NDAs and information that you have that you're not allowed, that they don't want you to talk about or potentially disclose. So that's kind of like confirmation. That is confirmation. It's not kind of like confirmation. That is direct confirmation.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's not kind of like, it's the real deal. That's
that is the real deal, and I really hope that their paper is published, like I said, within 30 days, within a month. They promised that it would be ready for Estes Park. I've been down there. I've been down there to Huntsville a couple of times. Actually, I live in the outskirts of Huntsville, and I've been talking to Richard and Amy and her mom, and and the whole situation over there, and just explaining to them how important it was that they not sit on this anymore,
Right.
and they really need to disclose, and they're having tremendous problems with hacking and. One
Nobody
time I
out
was
there
there,
should sign an NDA unless it has a time stamp. No greater than 2 years. You shouldn't sign an NDA unless it's like 2 years. It expires. These people signing these NDAs which never expire. It's basically a vow of silence. You're just signing your legal way into silence. And that's how
today, and
right.
that
it doesn't happen. It never happens. And then the other scientists that are close or know something about it, they're like, hey, we'll sign up this contract, and we sign an NDA, and you can be on this involved in the project. And then that what ends up is the project doesn't go anywhere. The NDA just gets used to silence the person.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
what I've seen.
I'm not interested in that, and any NDA I sign in the future will definitely have a clause that
I'm glad I've never signed any NDAs
Yes.
for anybody ever.
Well, I'm just as a warning to people because there's lots of people out there that are watching it. There's probably 157 of these people. I guarantee you 3 of them are working in or connected with labs, that other labs around
I've
the
been
country
asked to
that are
sign
doing
an
it.
NDA 5 times now on
Oh,
various
yes.
projects that I've been involved with.
Absolutely.
And I have no interest in those, and I don't really care what I lose out on for those individuals that want to try to keep everything locked down anyway.
No, it's because they want your research. They're trying to take your research and
Exactly.
co-opt it, and they don't have. They're all
well,
like,
NDAs can sometimes go both
yeah,
ways.
they
and
can
actually,
go both ways.
But when you have a nearly 1 terabyte database,
know,
you tend
it's-
to find and come across this trend that everyone who thinks they've got a totally original and unique idea, which they're the first ones ever to have, if you go and dig through the patents, not just the American
so many
patents, the
people get
Canadian
thrown with the
patents,
ideas.
the
Even if
Chinese
it's some
patents,
idiot that didn't put all the pieces together, didn't have the funding, he already came up with the idea and like thought about it. But
you'll
didn't
find
even
that
know
these
it.
things have
They
and
do
do
have.
exist, and they have long before the claimed discoverers of these things
Right.
have them. So
Like,
there are a great many ways to
there's
do the
also
experiment.
there's also a lot of synchronicity that I've found. You can research this in science, but like when somebody discovers something, it's usually found on the other side of the world. Some other scientist was working on it at the exact same time. That gets into the whole
Happens all the
spiritual,
time.
the spiritual aspect of synchronicities, and the Akashic records, where this information is supposedly stored. That's just all metaphysical and pseudoscience.
And I personally watch even people within our own research group, stuff that myself and these other people have talked about individually, on a one-to-one basis over phone calls or over Skype or WhatsApp calls. A year and a half later, I'll see pieces of the theory that I have integrated into their theory, which is fantastic because the closer that these things can get to a testable point, the closer we are to actually trying
That's
to prove
interesting.
it.
That's a very good point.
Here's the
Todd.
funny thing, though. This is the most important part about that. When these people talk about how they came to the conclusions, they just say that the stuff came to them, and I find this big discrepancy between
Yeah.
people remembering where they
Yeah.
and
So
Whether
there's
it's coming to the
egotistical,
conclusion.
like whether it's like they think it's their. The thing is that so many people won't repeat something until they're convinced that it's their own thoughts.
right,
You know what I mean?
and
So
I
it's
get
like-
that. Like I have to put my name on this, so because my reputation is on the line, I have
Right.
to make this my own, so that it's my reputation that I'm representing. So I'm not representing somebody else, which I
There's so
totally
many people
get.
that
I totally get that,
really could
right.
be credited for the origination of the ideas that don't get the credit because the person, by the time they realize it and they actually get the concept, they've forgotten who gave it to them, or they
This
forget
is
on
exactly
purpose.
why I love what
It's the
Tesla
same
said.
reason,
when,
like-
he was asked, what do you consider yourself? And do you consider yourself one of the greatest inventors? It was something on these lines. He said, I do not consider myself an inventor. I consider myself a discoverer. So he looked at all of the things that
Yeah.
he came up with as discoveries of ways to utilize the properties of nature already inherent in nature, and he didn't take claim to those things and take personal egotistical advantage in it. Now, of course, that was also one of his greatest financial downfalls because the entire
Yeah,
economy
because
runs on egos and the idea that you're going to support, protect, and claim your ideas as your own, and be willing to sue people in the courts through a complicated system of paperwork and false identifications and information that you can try to make that thing your own and recognized by society as a whole. But the fact is that these ideas are going to be discovered sooner or later. Many of them have. People try the stuff and they make an interesting discovery and don't ever talk about it. Like Is there a potential to say, take an entire craft and make it act like a liquid and slip through a thin space like a cat crawling underneath the door, which seems impossible sometimes.
Right.
You know, squeezing in that space.
Well, then how they get
Like,
into
how do you that? Can I claim for that? Because it just is a thing that happens. I don't know why.
But what you can claim intellectual property for is application of said technology. When you're actually getting to the stage where you're building a prototype, you're building a craft, and you find
Well,
that
it
this
gets down
connector
to
works, but
you
the
doing
nitty-gritty.
experiments, and then you get down to like you figured out that exact number, that exact frequency to use, and the exact material, and the exact alloy. That's where the intellectual property.
Specificity. That's the real key. When
That
you
is intellectual
when you
property.
create the parentheses around the limited number of things that make your idea particularly unique.
Right. When you worked hard to develop those things and those aspects for your invention to do the research, that's intellectual property, and that shouldn't be taken away from you because the other people didn't work for that. They're just going to steal your measurements, and they didn't do all the work that took you to get there to figure out that those are the dimensions and things you need to use. So
I think it's also very petty that we're talking about this in 2020 when we're still driving around in these gas-guzzling cars. We need anti-gravity technology really bad for this planet, and anything that's
low
done.
power electronic technology that work on excitons and instead of
We really need
photonics.
We really need this technology out there for the betterment of humanity, and to like hold it up and hold on to it for so long is in my opinion, it's a crime against humanity. It's not. There's so many scientists who've made massive discoveries who ended up just dying with them, never telling anyone about it. And that was one of the things why I was so interested in Amy and her family and everything, is that they claim to have something and they're holding on to it. Couldn't see any reason why they're holding on to it. Why not just disclose? And Richard told me over and over again, this is it's been a hellhole for him. At first he thought it was a blessing, but it's been nothing but a curse.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be over until they disclose, and they should do that as soon as possible. And if they're writing their paper, all the more power to them. Do it well, do it right. I've seen Amy Wright, I've seen Richard Wright. They do that very well, and hopefully it'll pass the scrutiny of the scientific community.
I hope she takes that energy and puts it towards real disclosure and getting information out, instead of cause she's just taking it all out on you and on us, and just that's misdirected use of your energy right there.
Yeah.
And you're fighting the wrong people.
You're fighting the wrong people. I came down there not to discover what they're doing and try to replicate it. I came down there to try to make it happen there. I offered to literally move to Alabama and set up a shop on their property, and I even found the lab that I was ready to make a down payment on that would have been delivered within a week. And I made it very real for them. I said, just put together the paperwork, let's get together a contract, let's work on it. The bosses, so long as the goal is anti-gravity technology and we're doing things right and the numbers make sense, there's going to be so much money the numbers won't matter. As they're on the right path, I am on anyone's team who's interested in that. So far, I have not found anyone. That's the really sad thing. I've not found anyone who's really open-minded to just trying anything. I think Woodward and Hathaway have been doing great work, and I really appreciate being able to see inside Hathaway's lab over there. We had a lot in common with some of the experiments that he's tried and we tried as well. He tried the falcon experiment, I think, with he was using what do you call it? Those static machines, Van de Graaff generators.
Who you're talking about?
Oh, we're talking about
Hathaway, yeah.
Hathaway,
Yeah, Hathaway Lab. So yes, yeah. So I had a question for Hathaway during the conference, and he had used Van de Graaff generators, some reasonably high power ones, to store up a charge and discharge it to test pilot off stuff.
Yeah.
And what I did not understand at all is why use one of the lowest current sources available in terms of generating high voltages when the key system in that experiment was supposed to be an incredibly high energy pulse discharge. So quite frankly, a Marx generator is on the very opposite spectrum of DC current that a Van de Graaff is. And so I'm not sure why that choice of equipment was made, but as far as the way that the experiment was conducted out, I would imagine that it was probably pretty accurate in that sense. It just simply didn't use the right kind of impulse currents, in my personal opinion. Of course, I don't have access to superconductors. If someone wants to send them to us, I will be glad to have access to your superconductors and pick up the liquid nitrogen that we need to make those experiments happen. But unless we happen to get a source of superconductors or other exotic materials to test for the
Yeah, we probably need a Dewar
or any of
flask.
the others,
A Dewar flask and some
Yeah.
gloves. Some
we could set it up if
protective
we
equipment,
had the test samples. And I've seen other results. Now, Wayne has also talked about this. You know, I don't know if you've seen it because you hardly ever check the reaction to this propulsion one. But anyways, Wayne has another link that we posted in there. He found somebody duplicating the experiment at 300 volts, the Pakhanov type discharge, with a multi-layered superconductor being cooled down in a small, isolated Faraday cage sampling system. And so he was measuring very small forces, which in that system were just above the noise floor, but showed consistent and repeatable results to demonstrate that it was producing a force, and that it was not predicted in GR according to the other.
300 volts
So I
from a
should
Mark
see if I can
generator?
find it. No, it wasn't a Mark generator. 300 volts straight from a capacitor.
So capacitor straight.
This is very low voltage. You know, this is not a megavolt Marks like Pakhanov. This is not a very high voltage Van de Graaff like Hathaway. This was just a 300 volt capacitor being discharged via some semiconductors into the sample that was down in the superconducting temperatures, and then seeing and observing results on an accelerometer that was fully shielded and designed specifically for the system. And so it was a low power replication, and what we are looking for is low power replications in a lot of cases to prove that the concepts don't scale in such a way that they are impossible to see on a small scale.
That's very interesting. Also, I heard about Pakhanov is that the effect is nonlinear. Every multiplication of power equals a tenfold increase in pulse energy or pulse, whatever it is. If it's gravitic pulses or if it's pushing out, we're not really sure about that yet. But going up to higher voltage levels and total number of joules would really increase the effect a lot. So it's something that you don't want to try in 300 volt range unless you have extremely sensitive equipment and you're willing to search around for their millinewtons and deal with those extremely weak forces. But like you said, it is possible to do these experiments at low power if you have the right equipment.
At least it would seem to be that way at this point.
You have any interesting questions?
Wow. 110 people still watching, man. It's been
Yeah, surprising
almost
after
3
all this
hours.
Are we really in?
We're almost in the 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Wow.
We're gonna end this before we get to the 3 hour mark. When people see a 3 hour video, they tend to not watch any of it because they just get overwhelmed and kind of intimidated. So, we've kind of covered everything I wanted to cover. Is there anything else I want to include? Because I want to wrap this call
No,
up.
I'm not really seeing any other questions that we need to answer immediately in the comments.
Yeah.
Either. So I think we pretty much covered what's going on here. I
It's an
can't wait to
exciting
actually
day.
see the results of the new setup and see how consistent they are when we get this thing powered up and get it set up. It's got to be shielded first right now because I have no intention of baking myself.
Yeah, that's why I got the Faraday cage ready for you
Yeah,
guys. We should
it's
move
awesome.
the whole rig inside there, and reset it all up in there so we can be protected and not fry our eyeballs out.
We just need to get the RF cable in there and we need to get the cam in there so that we
I
can
like
see
my
what's
vision.
going on.
I like being able to see.
We tested yesterday with that screen and it's just it's not doing the
It gives
job.
you a headache. Even with the protection, you can feel the RF coming in. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this, but your cell phone also puts out radiation in the microwave range, and you can feel that sometimes. This is much more powerful. Your cell phone is in the milliwatts. This is in the 20 watt range. It's not a very powerful amplifier. We're using pretty low power here. But you can feel it in the room when you turn that on.
3-4 orders of magnitude larger.
Yeah, it's much more powerful than a cell phone, and it's also a higher frequency. Or 9.5. I think cell phones are around 2, 4, 5, or something like that.
In Swiftican commented to create an ionic cloud shield over the surface of the craft and to defy gravity. I have done that. I've achieved that and got a total coronal glow over the entire surface of one of my test crafts that were 6 inches in diameter. I achieved that at 160,000 volts negative output potential at about 75 watts. And the entire surface was coated in what Tesla would have called effluvia, or a purple glow. which is very similar in appearance to dielectric barrier discharge. And I can tell you that it was not levitating off the ground or flying around, but it certainly did smell like ozone, and it was quite a beautiful sight. I mean, the sound was amazing, and so was the little spire at the end, where the ions were flying off the edge of the, of course, flying saucer-shaped looking test sample that I was checking out at the time. But you know, it takes more than just simply a DC plasma and some electric fields to control it. You need a way to force that plasma down, and you get into the MHD categories then, where you're using magnetic fields to entrain those electric charges, and you're using the Lorentz transform to exert forces on them, and then create a reaction force that way against the ions that are surrounding you in an atmosphere.
I got another lab that's really in on the plasma research and stuff, man. I gotta do more of these road trips and go out and check out other labs too, and really get the word out to people about all the research and that, because I know there's more stuff going on than just us too. There's definitely.
I hope there is.
I would hope so.
I haven't seen.
If we're like the peak of all the research that's going on
That's
right now,
sad.
it would be very sad for humanity. So let's be hopeful, and let's be hopeful those people decide to publish soon and come out with information, and let's hope that the information that's coming out soon is brings us closer towards disclosure and new technology. Yeah. So.
Okay, I would say that pretty much covers it then.
Yeah, that pretty much covers it. Thanks.
I hope you guys enjoyed.
Thanks for visiting Falcon Space, and we'll be in contact.
Thanks for coming and checking out the lab with us. We're so awesome to have you guys all here, and thank you all. Please check out upcoming videos and stay tuned, because we're gonna have some disclosures happening here.
Share, like, and subscribe. This is a video you really got to share. It's this is a key video.
Yeah, we'll get this out, and please, other people, you gotta like take clips out. We have a lot of cool stuff that happened in the stream, so like clip out some highlights, and let's put out some highlight videos to get some people's attention to this, and try to get it to the right people, so that we can get Elon Musk and Joe Rogan and some of these other people down here to see what we're doing, so that we can get the kind of attention this deserves, before they can suppress it and shut us all up and delete it off the face of the planet.
Amen to that. Peace out, guys.
Shoot. May the force be with you.